A grand castle appears as a voice wonders if this is the story of Lottie. In disbelief, a narrator stares at the text before them. A small child stares intently at a heavy book before it thuds onto her head, making her cry out in pain. Now bandaged and crying, the child, Lottie, realizes the contents of the book she read are true. Lottie reflects that she had initially dismissed the book as a simple novel a 5-year-old could read. At a lavish party, guests buzz with anticipation, hoping to catch a glimpse of a reclusive figure who rarely appears in high society. A newcomer to society asks about the figure, and another guest points out the infamous monster Duke, Duke Frodium. Duke Damien Frodium is revealed, a handsome master swordsman from the Empire's most powerful family, sipping wine with an intense gaze. A woman explains that the moniker Monster is actually a title born from admiration for his power. Damien's formidable aura is visualized with demonic skeletons, symbolizing him as the most powerful person in the Empire. The scene shifts to an imposing mansion at twilight, surrounded by barren trees. A somber flashback confirms that the stories about him were true. It is revealed that Damien was once a true demon who slaughtered indiscriminately until his evil influence mysteriously vanished. The narrative pinpoints a snowy landscape as the fated place where Damien and Lotalucia first met. Lotalucia recalls recognizing him instantly, feeling as though she had stepped into a fairy tale. Damien greets his daughter with chilling indifference, asking only for her name, and she nervously introduces herself as Lotalucia. Standing in the snow, Damien calls out for someone named Bellant, who responds from off-screen. Damien orders Bellant to provide Lotalucia a room and raise her in the mansion, to which his subordinate agrees. Without another glance, Damien turns and walks away, his expression cold and distant. An angry Lotalucia sits on a large chair, childishly mocking her father's detached command to raise her just so she won't die. She fumes, grateful to be taken in, but wishing her father could have phrased his reluctant acceptance with more kindness. The silhouettes of the mansion staff fill the background of her new, lonely life. Lotalucia discovers her room is far from her father's, feeling he deliberately wants her kept out of sight. Haughtily deciding she doesn't want to be near him anyway, her ears perk up at the sound of voices outside her door. A trio of maids discovers Lotalucia, fawning over how cute she is and offering her food, which she eagerly accepts. She takes a happy bite of a cookie, and the charmed maids immediately offer her more. The staff's opinions on her are divided. Some pity her and assume she'll be adopted out, but Lotalucia defiantly insists Damien is her father. The warm moment is shattered by a bang as a stern maid appears, demanding to know why the others aren't working. The stern maid lectures the others about their duties and the scary butler before turning her attention to Lotalucia as the others agree to leave. With a cheerful wave, Lotalucia says goodbye as the maids are ushered out and the door slams shut. Once alone, her smile fades as she thinks of the one person who is unhappy that she even exists. Now in a new dress, Lotalucia sits up in bed, alert. She reflects that while having meals brought to her room is better than eating with her father, it's frustrating when they arrive so late. Annoyed, she wonders which maid is responsible for her meal today. She angrily realizes it was the same stern maid from yesterday and fumes that the woman should just do her job properly. With a fiery glint in her eyes, Lotalucia clenches her fist, vowing to make trouble for that maid next time. As she runs down the hall, an unseen maid calls for her not to run too fast, and Lotalucia happily shouts back her agreement. Waddle. She stops mid-step, her curiosity piqued by something ahead. Her eyes widen in shock at an unexpected sight. Peek. She peeks around a corner with a tiny cat-like creature, surprised to find someone in a normally empty part of the mansion. She sees her father, Damien Frodium, the infamous monster duke. She recalls her mother revealing a shocking secret. Her father was not just a rumored monster, but a real demon. Her mother had described him as a true horror story demon who enjoyed violence and killing without a second thought. She reasons that because her father is a demon, his neglect is a form of kindness, and she's thankful he isn't worse. Damien begins to turn, and Lotalucia quickly ducks back into hiding just before he can spot her. A maid discovers her hiding and asks what she's doing, then offers to get her food despite skeptically calling her claim of hunger a lie. Lucia pouts, utterly confused about why the maid would call her a liar when she was telling the truth. Another maid gently intervenes, telling her co-worker not to tease Lucia so much. A maid offers Lucia a loaf of bread as the only food available, which she gratefully accepts. Clutching her bread, she resolves to be patient with the servants. Knowing her father's dislike of her makes her position precarious. Her thoughts spiral into childish fears, wondering who would protect her if a monster came out from under her bed. She comforts herself by remembering that while her father is distant, he has never actively harmed or harassed her. Filled with new resolve, Lucia vows to remain quiet and obedient until she is old enough to be independent. The scene transitions, showing snow melting away as green leaves sprout, indicating the passage of time. Now in a new dress, Lottie cheerfully runs down a hall, promising a concerned maid that she'll be careful. As she runs, she reflects on the fact that despite almost encountering her father many times, they've never spoken. She peeks into a room, believing that being ignored by a demon is far safer than attracting his attention. Finding nothing unusual, she feels relieved that her father's indifference allows her the freedom to explore the mansion. While deciding where to go next, she suddenly freezes in her tracks. She cautiously steps back from a pair of grand, ornate doors that are slightly ajar. She wonders why this particular door, which is always kept shut, is now open. Peeking through the crack with determined eyes, she decides not to let this rare opportunity slip away. She slips into her father's study, deciding to take a quick look around. After a brief search, she finds no books she can read and prepares to leave. Thump! On her way out, she stumbles over a misplaced stack of books. Annoyed by the mess, she complains that her father is disorganized and decides to tidy up for him, reaching for the book she tripped on. Her eyes widen with a flicker of curiosity as she examines the book. Holding the mysterious book, she is puzzled to find that its cover is completely blank. Her interest piqued, she decides to peek inside, figuring she won't be able to read it anyway. Opening the book, she is initially disappointed to see a blank page, but then notices text beginning to appear. Now seated on the floor and engrossed, she wonders if she's found a novel. She stares intently into the book's pages, suddenly questioning the strange nature of what she is reading. The scene shifts to a bright greenhouse, where a voice excitedly tells their milady that her story is the talk of the town. The woman, identified as Dahlia Frodium, Princess of the Frodium Dukedom, asks what they mean by her story. An unseen attendant gushes about Dahlia's fairy tale-like rise from the Lopez family to become a princess, a dream for the lower class. The story frames Dahlia as a victim who was once abused and scorned by her former family. With an image of vibrant blue flowers, the narration concludes that despite her past, Dahlia grew up well. A framed illustration depicts a marquis heroically rescuing Dahlia from danger. The attendant continues, explaining how all the young ladies now admire Dahlia and dream of having their own lives dramatically changed. Dahlia calmly refutes the story, stating she was never abused, but the maid dismisses it as her being too kind to her former family. As the maid calls her an angel, Dahlia laments that no one is actually listening to what she says. The maid muses that if that kid were present, she would have made a perfect villainess for Dahlia's heroic story. Dahlia inquires about this kid, and the maid specifies she's referring to the Duke's first daughter. A flashback shows two maids gossiping, revealing that the first daughter's existence is a little-known secret because she's never spoken of. Now deeply curious, Dahlia encourages the maid to continue her story. The maid claims the first daughter, though not the Duke's real child, was violent and would have surely tormented Dahlia. Back in the study, Lottie reads these exact words in disbelief, realizing the villainess's name is her own. The narration in the book explains that its story was written for children of her age to enjoy. The story is about a beautiful but emotionless girl who resembled a puppet. This girl's life changed when she discovered love and finally fell in love herself. Lottie realizes the problem. The girl in the story became the foster daughter of Duke Damien Frodium, her own father. She initially brushes this coincidence aside, thinking it's not a big deal. An illustration contrasts the two girls, Lottie in a dark red dress and Dahlia in a light blue one. The narrative ominously states that there is in fact a real problem. In a flashback from the book, Dahlia hesitantly approaches Damien, calling him father. She asks about a mysterious forbidden room that the butler warned her never to enter. Damien explains the room belonged to his daughter who died last winter from an unfamiliar disease. The book's narration warns Dahlia never to enter that specific room under any circumstances. A shocked Lottie questions why her story counterpart died so suddenly. She frantically wonders if she died from poor health, insisting she's too young for that. Lottie tries to dismiss the book, hoping it's all just a strange coincidence. A formal portrait of Damien is displayed. She reasons that since her father is famous, it's not unusual for his name to be in stories. She suddenly freezes, struck by the chilling thought. What about me? Lottie realizes that since no one outside the mansion knows of her existence, the story can't be a coincidence. A framed portrait shows Lottie looking thoughtful. Creak. The study door begins to open behind her. Snap. Burn. The book suddenly bursts into flames in her hands, startling her. With her heart racing, she angrily wonders who would burn a book. An ominous voice echoes through the study, asking who allowed her to enter. Jolt. She recognizes the voice with a sudden shock. It's her father's. Lottie internally fumes at her father for burning the book without warning, noting his carelessness and how the story says he will warmly accept a foster daughter after she dies. She despairs that learning of her death is made worse by knowing she'll be compared to someone else. Deciding the book must have been unimportant, she defiantly resolves to do whatever she wants from now on. Damien calmly asks if she thought he wouldn't recognize the book, adding he'd never leave an important one lying around. Lottie smugly says it's a pity, but her confidence falters. She nervously glances back, wondering why he's silent. A tense moment hangs in the air as she waits. She stares in disbelief as she sees Damien smiling. Her thoughts race as she concludes he must be crazy. It's the first time she's ever seen him smile, and she wryly wonders if he burned his brain instead of the book. She panics as he walks towards her, silently pleading for him to go back. Damien muses aloud, questioning if her rebellious personality was what she meant by living quietly. He playfully asks if that wasn't her plan after all. He declares Lottie's adjustment period over, observing that she seems to have settled in well. He finally acknowledges her properly, saying, "I see, my daughter." Damien lifts her into his arms, announcing he will officially register her as his daughter, leaving Lottie blushing and flustered. He calls for someone named Veronica, who appears instantly, surprising Lottie. Damien entrusts Lottie to Veronica's care as her godmother, while Lottie defiantly bats his hand away from her hair. Veronica formally introduces herself, promising to serve Lottie from now on. Stare. Lottie recognizes Veronica as her father's aide and thinks it would be beneficial to get close to her. She gives Damien a cheerful hug, asking Veronica to take care of her as well. The scene shifts, noting that barely 24 hours have passed since the new arrangement began. Tucked into bed, Lottie playfully tells Veronica not to walk on her blanket fort, and she agrees. Lottie's hands press against the soft blanket from underneath. The scene transitions, fading into the story from the book. Dahlia hovering near Duke Frodium. The text clarifies she was lingering nearby for no particular reason. The book explains that this is where she ultimately met the story's male lead, Hida. An ornate illustration reveals the couple, with the story noting they didn't save the world or make sacrifices for it. Lottie reflects that after her death in the story, she became an insignificant character used only for comparison. Clench. She fumes that the book was useless, failing to explain how to prevent her own death. She questions the book's claim that demons will appear, believing they vanished long ago. A textured background marks a transition as the narration hints at a significant event after her death. Her stomach lets out a loud growl, and she complains about being hungry after thinking so hard. Veronica gently suggests that if she's hungry, she should go to the dining room first. Tucked inside her blanket fort, Lottie excitedly asks if she can eat without her father. Veronica remarks that Lottie must be very hungry. Lottie agrees, secretly thinking she isn't, but plans to eat alone in her room as usual. Entering the dining room, Lottie is shocked to find Damien already seated at the head of the table. Glance. She nervously peeks at him, confused as to why he isn't busy with his ducal duties. Lottie thinks back to her original plan to eat alone in her room after a quick meal in the dining hall. Now seated uncomfortably at the table, she regrets her decision and wonders why her father suddenly wants to eat with her. Lottie asks Damien if he isn't busy, and he simply replies that he wanted to eat with his daughter. Trying to act normal, Lottie gives a cheerful "yep" in response to his presence. Damien watches her with a slight smile, commenting that she must be very hungry. Flustered, Lottie admits she's hungry today and impatiently asks when the meal will be served. The kitchen seems to be running slower than usual today. Damien asks what his daughter has been doing, and Lottie lists her activities just as a maid announces dinner is served, to Lottie's delight. A delicious-looking steak is presented on a plate. Lottie struggles with her knife and fork, wondering why she can't cut the meat. She panics internally, realizing she can't just use her hands like she does when eating alone in her room. Frustrated, she questions if the knife is broken and accidentally flings it into the air. The knife soars across the dining room, heading directly for Damien. Damien touches his cheek, noticing a fresh cut and calmly stating that it's bleeding. Lottie realizes with a jolt of panic that she is in very big trouble. An ominous image of Damien appears as narration recalls the rumor that he is a demon who cannot be harmed. Lottie frets over her father's injury, wondering what to do as she stares at the blurry knife. In her panic, she leans too far over the table and cries out as she begins to fall. Lottie shuts her eyes, bracing for impact as she tumbles from her chair. Damien catches her just in time, holding her safely in his arms and telling her she's okay. Lottie feels relieved that she's safe, but guilty that she hurt her father. Damien gently tells her to be more careful. Back on her feet, Lottie looks up at Damien and sincerely apologizes for hurting him. Damien stares down at her, momentarily stunned into silence by her apology. Sigh. Misinterpreting his silence, Lottie assumes he must be furious with her. Damien gently pats her head, explaining he was more worried that she might have fallen and hurt herself. Lottie is shocked, realizing that he didn't blame her and was genuinely concerned for her safety. She reflects on how she had assumed he hated her because of his cold initial welcome. Wondering why he acted so distant, she decides it doesn't matter now and calls out to her injured father. A flashback begins in a rustic room as a voice asks Lottie if she remembers what her mom told her about catching colds. Lying sick in bed, a younger Lottie is gently chided for getting ill because she didn't listen to her mom. Lottie pleads with her mama to get better, and the woman with her back to the viewer lovingly agrees. Her mother playfully offers to use a little magic to help her feel better. Returning to the present, Lottie places her small hand on Damien's cheek, chanting, "Pain, pain, fly away." She pulls her hand away with a worried expression, asking if her magic isn't working. Damien closes his eyes, reassuring her that it is working and that the pain is already gone. Lottie beams with pride, wondering if her successful magic means she's a talented wizard. Damien looks at her with a serious expression, acknowledging what she did for him. He then quietly asks if her actions mean that she doesn't hate him after all. Lottie's eye widens in surprise at his unexpected question. Completely baffled, Lottie questions why her father would ever think she hated him. In a brief flashback, Veronica tells Damien she doesn't think Lottie hates him, but he coldly dismisses her. Lottie watches from the stairs as Damien silently walks away from Veronica. Lottie has a revelation. Just as she misunderstood him, perhaps he has been misunderstanding her all along. Back at the table, Damien gently places Lottie in her seat, telling her it was just a misunderstanding. On her plate, the steak is now perfectly sliced, and Damien calmly says, "Let's eat." With a beaming smile, Lottie thanks her father and decides not to overthink their new relationship. Damien observes Lottie from across the dining table, musing that his daughter seems to have a healthy appetite. A view of the beautifully arranged meal highlights the formality of their dinner. Lottie playfully asks Damien if he'll be angry if she doesn't eat well, testing his patience. A spark of curiosity fills her eye as she watches for his reaction. Damien leans forward with a charming smile, admitting that he's curious to find out. In a flashback, Lottie recalls a maid's formal posture, thinking she must have felt a sense of reverence. She reflects on her past, feeling alienated despite her high rank and refusing to accept pity from the staff. The scene changes as Lottie, in a new dress, interrupts a conversation, insisting she wants to hear. Two maids whisper nervously, worried about Lottie overhearing them, especially with Veronica nearby, dismissing her as just some child. One maid smiles condescendingly, believing Lottie is used to being ignored and doesn't need to know what they were discussing. Chill. Lottie confronts them with an icy stare, asking if they're making excuses when they were clearly talking about her. She internally acknowledges that they've always disregarded her, but she had hoped to handle it without using her father's authority. Lottie stands her ground, telling them to act as they always have if they can't treat her with respect. Turning away, she questions their sudden silence, reminding them that the owner of the estate has officially acknowledged her. Sly. She gives them a pointed look, asking if they are daring to look down upon the Frodium family name. Flinch. One maid nervously denies it and apologizes, thinking Lottie's presence is as intimidating as the Duke's. Lottie pouts, realizing they've been subdued, and notes that her father must be waiting for her. Outside, Damien waits for her, coolly stating that she's late. Lottie stands before him with her head lowered, meekly promising it won't happen again. As Veronica looks on, Damien internally notes Lottie's repeated outfit, while Lottie tells herself not to take her frustrations out on him. Lottie points to a grand carriage, suggesting they hurry so they don't keep the coachman waiting. She peeks out with a curious expression as they head toward the carriage. Veronica waves them off, wishing them a safe trip, prompting Lottie to ask if she's not joining them. Damien explains that it will be just the two of them today, as Veronica is busy, much to Lottie's disappointment. Held in Damien's arms, Lottie waves goodbye as he silently resolves to invite Veronica along next time. Inside the carriage, Lottie presses against the window in awe, exclaiming that it's her first time riding in one. She gazes at the passing scenery, marveling at how she's finally seeing the world beyond the forest. Surrounded by an illustration of flowers, Lottie declares her newfound desire to learn more about the world. Stare. She turns from the window to find herself staring directly at Damien across the carriage. Lottie reflects that, while they've grown closer, they've rarely been alone together due to his busy schedule. Damien breaks the silence, gently asking if she is doing well. Pouting, Lottie suggests he could visit if he's that curious, and blames the maid's gossip on his apparent neglect. He smirks and says he'll consider it. Rattle. As the carriage moves, Lottie thinks about an earlier event that makes her question if he's truly her father. A memory surfaces of a younger Lottie being held lovingly by her white-haired mother. Suddenly, a new doubt strikes her as she wonders about her father's true identity. The scene transitions with a grainy, static-like effect, representing her confused state of mind. Lying on a sofa, Lottie reasons that her mother wouldn't lie, questioning why Damien would bring her to the estate if he didn't care. Peeking from behind a door, she wonders aloud if Damien truly believes she is his daughter. A confusing wash of static and disjointed words, "what" and fills her mind. Back in the carriage, she feels a pang of regret, thinking she should have just been grateful for his acceptance. In a parallel thought, Damien looks out the window, wondering if his daughter truly doubts their connection. As leaves drift past, a voice from outside announces their arrival to His Grace. They have arrived at a beautiful, ornate building that appears to be a high-end clothing boutique. Look, a man rushes to the door to greet them as they enter the shop. A shopkeeper greets Damien and asks if he's shopping for his adorable baby, causing Lottie to tug his sleeve and demand he scold the man. The enthusiastic shopkeeper announces he will prepare a variety of clothes for the baby. Holding Lottie tightly, Damien requests comfortable clothing, while she insists again that he scold the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper proudly explains their clothes contain special magic for comfort, but Lottie remains unimpressed. He reveals a vast wardrobe filled with beautiful dresses, inviting her to try them on. Lottie models a variety of beautiful dresses as unseen voices praise how well she suits every style, even those from the East. A burst of narration declares that while clothes may be wings, Lottie is the angel wearing them. Standing in a lovely summer dress, Lottie listens as the shopkeeper suggests focusing on seasonal clothes, while a thought bubble questions this angel being the daughter of a demon. Exhausted, Lottie decides she's done trying on clothes and mentally sends a telepathic plea to her father. Damien seems to receive her message, agreeing that it's fine to stop now, as Lottie internally exclaims her love for him. Flop. Lottie is shocked, and the shopkeeper collapses when Damien orders them to prepare every outfit she has tried on. The shopkeeper enthusiastically promises to prepare all the clothes as quickly as possible. Lottie rushes over to Damien, who calmly asks her what's wrong. She tries to explain the immense cost, but he raises his hand with a challenging look, questioning why she's bringing up money to him. Lottie recalls a teacher's lesson on limited goods, then holds her father's hand and asks him what the problem is. With a determined and shadowy expression, Damien gives a simple, powerful command: buy them all. Drop. The shopkeeper and Lottie are completely stunned by his decision, with Lottie wondering if this is truly her father. Done! Done! As 2 racks of beautiful dresses are displayed, Damien firmly repeats his intention to buy everything. Lottie's frantic thoughts are represented by a cute pattern as she questions her father's sanity. As the shopping trip concludes, the shopkeeper agrees to alter and deliver the clothes while Lottie asks if they can finally go home. Rub rub. The shopkeeper takes Damien's hand, fondly asking where he found such an adorable baby. Lottie fumes at being called a baby, and Damien gives the man a cold glare, correcting him. She's my daughter. The shopkeeper misinterprets his correction and apologizes for not realizing she was a foster daughter. With a dark and menacing aura, Damien coldly tells the man that he should be sorry. Lottie senses her father's quiet fury, recognizing that despite his unchanged expression, he is definitely mad. Their carriage arrives back at the magnificent Frodium estate as the sun sets in a colorful sky. Open. Veronica cheerfully greets them at the door, only to find Lottie fast asleep in Damien's arms. Damien gently brings a finger to his lips, signaling for Veronica to be quiet. Stirring slightly in her sleep, Lottie nestles closer into her father's embrace. Veronica offers to carry Lottie inside, but Damien declines, stating he'll take the tired child in himself. Veronica watches them go, observing that it's the first time she's seen Damien greet anyone at the door and acknowledging his role as Lottie's escort. Walking through the mansion, Damien decides against changing Lottie's clothes in case she wakes up. Creak. After he leaves, the door to Lottie's bedroom opens again, just a crack. A dark, shadowy presence observes Lottie sleeping, noting that a new child has entered the Frodium's possession. An unseen figure learns of Damien's new daughter, as a mysterious agent is ordered to capture the child for their master. A young boy with gray hair decides he needs to see Damien's new daughter for himself. A colorful informational page from the story's chronicler's spring palette is displayed with friendly notices for their readers. Stacked. A massive pile of paperwork sits on a desk, indicating a formidable workload. A red-haired aide points out that Damien pushed aside all his duties just to have an outing with Lottie. Rustle. Damien wearily handles a document, questioning if he truly has to deal with such matters. His aide points out he'd do it anyway, but Damien dismisses him, stating he's only following tradition. Hesitant. The aide pauses for a moment before turning to leave the study. Damien looks up from his desk with a thoughtful expression, asking if there's anything else. The aide reports that the young master will be returning soon, a portrait of him visible in the background. Shock. Damien casually tosses a tray aside, stating he was never informed of this development. Rustle. As the aide insists he must have been informed, Damien begins searching through his papers, demanding to see the letter. Piled up. The aide sweats, thinking it will be impossible to find a single letter in the mountain of paperwork. Damien effortlessly plucks the correct envelope from the pile, leaving his aide wondering if he's being ignored. After reading the letter, Damien confirms the news and asks his aide how he knew about it. Damien acknowledges that the young master knows him well and resolves to check his mail more carefully in the future. His thoughts then turn serious as he wonders if the returning young master is aware of his daughter's existence. A flashback shows a younger Lottie, who rarely hides her feelings, crying and clinging to Veronica, while narration notes something was unusual that day. The scene transitions with a close-up of Damien's elegant and formal attire, symbolizing his status and authority. Shock. Lottie stands frozen with a horrified expression. As narration notes, she likely didn't intend to speak her thoughts aloud. Tap, tap. Back in his study, Damien taps a document and asks his aide if he remembers their recent outing. Damien asks the aide directly if something happened to Lottie on that day. The aide confirms, explaining that Lottie accidentally overheard maids gossiping as she was walking by. He reports the maid's cruel rumor that since Lottie isn't his biological daughter, Damien will inevitably abandon her. Darken. Damien's expression grows cold and menacing as he quietly processes the information. With a calm yet chilling resolve, Damien orders his aide to deal with the situation. He reflects that he kept his distance to avoid frightening her, never realizing such rumors were spreading. Damien decides he must formally introduce Lottie as Aphrodite, seeing the rumors as a surprisingly useful opportunity. Looking up from below, the aide is completely baffled by his master's logic. Damien turns away, cryptically asking if humans don't enjoy dramatic stories. A romantic flashback reveals Duke Frodium once loved a secret lady with white hair, but she left him. The story of their tragic romance quickly spread throughout the capital. The scene shifts to Lottie standing before a grand door, wondering if it's her father's bedroom. Quiet. Against a whimsical background of chicks, she cautiously peeks into the room. She assumes her father is in his office, as he usually is at this hour, just as the door begins to open. Lottie bursts into the room with excitement, loudly announcing that this will be the room she explores today. The camera pans across the vast and ornately decorated, yet somber, bedroom. Turn, turn. She twirls, musing that her father isn't really a person, then abruptly stops. Stare. Her eyes land on an ornate portrait on the wall as she realizes it's a picture of her father. Looking closer at the portrait, Lottie observes how utterly expressionless his face is. As she ponders, a maid in the background internally sighs over how handsome the Duke is. Pause. Lottie examines a larger group portrait, unconvinced of his handsomeness but admitting he stands out from the others. Done! She has a sudden realization that he looks similar to her, wondering if it's because they both have black hair. She imagines what she might have looked like as a boy, noting the resemblance despite their different eye colors. Appear. Ack. Lottie lets out a yelp of shock as Damien suddenly materializes behind her, calling her name. Thump, thump. Her heart pounds in her chest as she wonders how he always appears without any warning. Angry. Damien finds her reaction amusing, but Lottie glares up at him, insisting she is not having fun. Sneak. She tries to leave, but he stops her, asking if she wouldn't have come in had she known he was there. Hearing his words, Lottie looks up with wide, hopeful eyes and asks if she is allowed to enter. Damien smirks, pointedly asking if he looks unhappy to see his daughter. Lottie walks toward her father, the moment captured in a warm, sparkling light. When Damien asks why she visited, Lottie simply replies that she came for no particular reason. A beautiful portrait shot frames Lottie sitting amongst an illustration of blooming pink roses. Gasp. Lottie is stunned when Damien declares there is no place in the entire estate that she cannot enter. She excitedly asks if that means she can even go into the rooms that are kept closed. Damien confirms her freedom to explore, while Lottie silently questions if he's being sarcastic. Bright. The red-haired aide suddenly appears, his chained earring glittering. He arrives with refreshments, explaining that his grace requested them. Lottie asks if her father ordered them. Sparkle. A beautiful array of desserts is presented, as the aide confirms Damien was thinking of his little lady, a title Lottie dislikes. As Damien tells her to eat, Lottie decides to forgive the aide, Bellant, for his forgetfulness. Lottie offers her father a spoonful of pudding, telling him to open his mouth. Surprised, Damien asks if she means him, and Lottie, now in his lap, confirms, cheekily adding that Bellant has already lost points. Lottie's arm begins to ache as she holds the spoon, wondering why her father won't eat. She asks if it's because demons can't eat desserts, to which he replies, no, shocking Bellant, who realizes she knows his secret. Hesitant, Damien looks down at the offered dessert with a conflicted and weary expression. Lick. After a moment, he delicately touches the pudding and licks it off his finger. Lottie is relieved her arm no longer hurts, while Bellant lightly scolds Damien for making her wait so long. Glare. A close-up reveals Damien shooting a menacing glare at Bellant for his comment. Scared. Bellant offers a frightened apology to the imposing Damien. Damien questions how Lottie knows so much about demons, and she eagerly explains they lack blood and tears. Lean. Damien rests his head on his hand, thoughtfully admitting that her assessment isn't wrong. Lottie playfully wonders aloud if her father should be excluded from her description of demons. Giggle. Bellant frantically begs to be excluded too, which makes Lottie laugh. Lottie explains she only knows what's in the book. But since her father isn't the main character, there's little information about him. Her expression turns somber as she considers the limits of her knowledge. Damien watches her with a soft, knowing look. Lottie's determination returns as she declares her desire to know more. Bellant quickly covers her ears, insisting she should only hear pleasant things. Damien calmly states that there isn't much more to tell her beyond what she already knows. As an explanation reveals demons are aggressive creatures that enjoy drinking blood, a horrified Lottie realizes the chilling tales were not just myths. Bellant frantically covers Damien's mouth to stop him. Terrified Lottie will become afraid, while Damien tries to reassure her. Tilt. Lottie looks up, confused by their sudden panic. Damien's expression is thoughtful and shadowed as he looks down. An informational notice from the Spring Palette translation team is displayed. Bellant anxiously covers Damien's mouth, worried Lottie will become afraid, while Damien attempts to reassure her about the demons she will encounter. Tilt. Lottie glances up with a questioning look. Pondering Damien's intentions, Bellant notices a barrier and is shocked that Damien would reveal such things to Lottie, but Damien claims it's only a problem because other demons are around. Bellant protests that Lottie is human and shouldn't be exposed to these dark truths. Noting her worsening mood, Bellant wonders what's wrong, but Lottie simply states that she wants to know. Damien reveals that this is a place where demons are unable to reside. He explains that in ancient times, demons and magicians wreaked havoc until the shield Dysaptia was created, a time when some humans could identify demons. Lottie gasps with a shocking realization. If that's true, her demon father shouldn't be able to stay here. Looking at Damien, she concludes there must have been a solution for him to remain. Damien smiles faintly and confirms that a solution was indeed found. He explains that the demons created an artificial doorway, a gate, to bypass the shield. A simple cartoon illustrates that demons cannot cross the gate freely and need permission. Ponder. Lottie recalls the Frodium family's immense power, realizing they could easily obtain permission to cross. An image of a hand holding the gate symbolizes absolute control. Clench. Damien reveals the gate is under Frodium jurisdiction, and no one from the Devildom may pass without their consent. Narration explains that, despite his humble origins, Damien now wields power rivaling the Demon King himself. Rise, she sits up, ready for her next adventure. Damien muses that he is working in his room instead of his office, which is why Lottie found him. Her thoughts return to the portrait she saw earlier, curious about the identity of the dark-haired child. Step. She approaches Damien at his piano and calls his name. Grasp. Lottie tugs on her father's sleeve, announcing that she has something she's curious about. He leads her with a quiet, contemplative expression. Firm. His hand holds hers securely as they walk together. Damien brings Lottie to stand before the grand family portrait on the wall. Pointing to the small boy with black hair, Lottie asks who it is. Damien pauses, his expression unreadable as he looks at the painting. Lottie waits with wide, curious eyes for his response. As she asks again who the boy is, Damien turns and reveals, "It's me." Lottie is utterly shocked by the revelation, asking about the other people in the portrait, whom Damien confirms were his family. Hesitantly, Lottie asks an innocent yet profound question. Did her father have a mommy and a daddy? Poof. She sweetly confesses that she imagined he just magically appeared out of thin air. Damien smiles faintly, explaining he doesn't have parents who birthed him, but he does have ones that raised him. Lottie remembers a story her daddy told her about how demons come into the world. The story illustrates that while demons can experience human-like love, it is a rare occurrence for them. Instead, she recalls, demons are often born with monstrous beasts that act as their provisional guardians. Without a proper guardian, these demons grow to be as savage as the beasts, and finding one becomes increasingly difficult over time. Looking back at the portrait, Lottie asks if the humans pictured were his mommy and daddy, realizing her father was a demon who found a human family. Damien confirms they were his adoptive parents, and that the other boy was his brother, the original heir, prompting Lottie to ask how he became the Duke. A flashback shows a younger Damien visiting an elderly man on his deathbed, explaining that the previous Duke of Frodium had no direct heirs. Damien tells the frail man that it's fine, and to speak comfortably with him. The man weakly notes that Damien hasn't aged at all since he was young. In the somber atmosphere, the man reveals that he has a favor to ask of him. Back in the present, Damien holds Lottie, explaining that as a demon he must eventually leave the family name to a human to carry on the lineage. Lottie senses from his tone how deeply her father treasured his adoptive family. She realizes people call him a monster duke only because they've never seen his deeply human side. Standing on the couch, Lottie looks at him with newfound understanding and says he must truly love the Frodium family. Damien touches his neck with a gentle smile, admitting that he simply has a hard time expressing his feelings. He reflects that having a place to return to, no matter what happens in the world, is a miracle. Lottie sadly recalls how her own home disappeared from her life. The scene shifts to a flashback, featuring a thoughtful woman with light hair. Thump. She relaxes in a chair while speaking to Damien, noticing a parenting book on his desk. She smiles, explaining that demons' mental growth is fast while their physical growth is slow, and she wanted to let him know she feels a connection to Lottie. As she notes how Lottie looks like an adorable human child, Damien asks somberly if she's saying his daughter looks truly human. Returning to the present, Lottie tugs on her father's sleeve as he gently cups her cheek. A memory of a formidable stone wall flashes by. A narration explains that a true family bond is built upon shared memories. Relying solely on blood ties without spending time together is not enough. Expecting a loving family under such conditions is impossible. Damien resolves to make the dukedom a place Lottie can always call home. He gently holds her face, and Lottie feels that a part of her has been waiting to hear these words. Her thoughts drift, confessing that while she acts happy, she truly misses someone. She recalls the forest where she spent her life with that person. Drip. A memory of a white-haired woman embracing her surfaces as she thinks of her, and a tear falls from her eye. Teary-eyed, Lottie begins to cry in the present moment. Damien quickly reassures her, telling her not to cry as she wipes her tears away. Clutch. She hugs him tightly, thinking she has finally gained a place she can return to. Sniffle, sniffle. Lottie fidgets, burying her face in his shoulder as she calms down. Hesitant, Damien's hand hovers over her back, unsure how to comfort his crying daughter. Pat. Pat. He gently pats her back, softly murmuring, There. The scene changes as Lottie recalls her peaceful life being interrupted by an unexpected guest. Peeking from the top of the stairs, a younger Lottie watches a small boy who looks up, confused. The scene shifts to a bright, sunny morning sky. Lottie wakes up, remarking on the noise as a maid wishes her good morning. Sit up. Lottie sits up excitedly, telling her maid, Veronica, that she heard something interesting yesterday. She eagerly recounts the rumor about her father hiding away a daughter he adores after loving a woman deeply. Lottie laughs at the romantic story, declaring it impossible, prompting Veronica to playfully ask if Lottie invented it herself. Pause. Lottie's mood changes as she suddenly asks what happened to the maids from the other day. Gloom. Veronica's expression darkens as she gives a chillingly vague answer. Who knows? Trying to reassure her, Veronica sits down and says the maids were probably just sent home, as Lottie should only know good things. Lottie looks out the window, once again noting that the estate seems noisy today. While brushing her hair, Veronica explains everyone is busy preparing a room, which confuses Lottie, who thinks guest rooms should be sufficient. Flustered, Veronica realizes Lottie is unaware of the situation, leaving Lottie to wonder about her maid's strange reaction. Lottie asks Veronica if someone is coming, and Veronica hints that it's the lady's older brother. Confused, Lottie clarifies that she is the lady, and Veronica confirms the guest is Lady Lodalucia's brother. Shock. Lottie is stunned by the impossible news that she has a brother. Jump. She leaps off Veronica's lap in a hurry, startling her maid. As she dashes down the hall, she thinks there was never any mention of her having siblings. Halt! She skids to a stop at the top of the grand staircase. She sees a man with red hair and a small boy below, wondering if this person from the book is her family. The man introduces the boy as young Master Bihan, her new older brother, whose gaze is icy cold. Lottie looks on in confusion while Bihan glares up, disdainfully thinking about her now being a lady. In a swirl of dread, Lottie feels certain that he hates her and wonders what she could have done. Run. She turns and flees back up the stairs as the red-haired man calls after her in alarm. Under the night sky, the man's voice echoes outside the mansion, asking where she is going. Alone in her room, Lottie questions why she ran, feeling he's the only one who hates her. Lottie asks a maid where Damien is, and learns he has instructed her to dine alone, making her pout. Hop. She crawls across her room, wondering if her father is busy. She sadly fears Damien might not need her anymore now that he has a son. Lying in bed, she admits the thought only makes her more upset. She curls into a ball, hoping everything will be better when she wakes up. A new day begins as sunlight streams over the ducal estate. Panic. Lottie wakes up in a frenzy, crying to a worried Veronica that things are not fine at all. Stare. Realizing Veronica already knew, Lottie grabs her face and asks if she is close with Bihan. A flustered Veronica admits she and Bihan have known each other for a long time. Lottie feels a pang of disappointment, but acknowledges their long history makes sense. Touch. She decides she wants to go outside, hoping some fresh air will improve her mood. The scene shows Bihan standing alone with a somber expression. Ugh. Lottie is immediately dismayed to find Bihan waiting right outside her door. Turn. Her first instinct is to go straight back to her room. Touch. Bihan unexpectedly reaches out and touches her hair, finding her reaction weird. Slap. A bloody flashback of a hand striking another flashes through his mind. Bihan stares at his own hand before turning his gaze back to Lottie. He coldly tells Lottie that she doesn't suit their father's tastes. Bihan explains their father prefers bright hair, leaving a confused Lottie in his wake. He continues his critique, stating their father also prefers blue eyes to red, and he doesn't understand why she's here, but Lottie dismisses his nonsense, thinking she is daddy's daughter, and that's all that matters. Bihan wonders why his father took in such a useless girl, as Lottie thinks he's weird and annoying. Twirl. Lottie spins away from him with a flourish. Stomp, stomp. She angrily marches back toward him. Point. Lottie declares that talk of tastes is nonsense, as the only reason needed is that she is daddy's daughter. She turns the question back on him, asking if he is here for a specific reason. Bihan clutches his chest and quietly confirms that he is. He places a hand over his heart, his expression filled with a quiet sorrow. Lottie interprets his words as him saying he is different from her, who was picked up outside. Later, Bihan stands alone in his old room, noting that it hasn't changed. Touch. He runs a hand along a table, satisfied that it's dust-free, because he informed Bellant of his return. Drop. He sits on a couch, justifying his harsh words by thinking he only told the truth. He reminisces about his duties, handling magic-related work while his father focused on the empire. Annoyed, he glares at giant stacks of paperwork, irritated that his workload has suddenly increased, all assigned by Damien. Fret. Pacing anxiously, he wonders if something is wrong with his father and reveals he cast a spell to spy on the estate. His magic reveals shocking news. Duke Frodium has taken in a new child, leaving him baffled. Sigh. Back on the couch, Baihan laments that his father dumped work on him, only to bring home a strange new girl. Bihan sits up with a look of pure surprise. Burst. He immediately bolts from his seat and runs toward the open terrace door. Staring outside, he thinks in disbelief that his eyes must be fooling him. He watches Lottie run across the garden, wondering where she could be going. Noticing she's heading for the main entrance, he anxiously worries she's planning to run away. Determined to stay, he worries that she intends to abandon the family name after their earlier encounter. Plop. He collapses to the floor, concluding her escape attempt is pointless since the entrance is closed. Wake. He suddenly wakes up by the rainy terrace, realizing he must have dozed off. Rise. Sitting up, he notices with a start that he left the terrace door open. He gazes into the rain, briefly wondering if Lottie has returned. Close. He quickly shakes off the thought and shuts the door, deciding it's not his concern. As he walks away, he can't help but think that she'll get caught in the downpour. He argues with himself, reasoning he shouldn't worry about the child receiving their father's affection. Plop. He dismisses the idea she could be in danger, but then jumps up, horrified by the thought that a fragile human might actually die from the rain. His resolve hardens as he thinks of that kid in trouble. Schwa. Elsewhere, Lottie huddles in the rain as Bihan recalls seeing her head for the entrance. Schwa. As the downpour continues, a thought suddenly strikes him. In a flashback, a furious Lottie stomps away from Bihan, thinking she ought to hit him for being so annoying. A map shows her meandering path through the gardens as she wandered aimlessly. Drip, drop. Her flashback continues as she feels the first cold raindrops. Seeing how far she is from the mansion, she decides to find shelter nearby. Achoo. Hidden under a bush, she lets out a sneeze and shivers from the cold. She looks up at the sky, realizing with a sinking feeling that the rain isn't stopping. Chill? A deep cold sets in as she waits helplessly. Staring into the rain, she wonders how long she'll be stuck there all alone. The thought of returning to the mansion only to face Bihan fills her with dread. Slump. Despair washes over her as she fears she'll be alone again, certain no one knows where to find her. Just as she gives up hope, a voice finds her in the darkness. She looks up in shock to see Bihan standing before her in the rain. Without a word, Bihan begins to remove his outer coat. Toss. He throws the coat to a stunned Lottie, simply telling her to take it. The large coat slips from her small shoulders as Bihan notes she's at least covered now. He observes that she isn't as drenched as he'd feared, guessing she found good shelter. He feels a wave of relief, telling himself it's only because it would be a problem if his father's favorite human fell ill. Schwa. As the rain finally lets up, he decides it's time for them to head back. Tap, tap, tap. Lottie thinks he's very fast as she struggles to keep up, while he internally notes how slow she is. He briefly glances back at her. He lets out a small, quiet sigh. Lottie is surprised to realize he has slowed his pace to walk alongside her. Peeking at him, she sees he's far wetter than she is and wonders if he came out in the storm just to find her. She starts to wonder if she's misunderstood him, only for Bihan to bluntly state, "I hate you." Annoyed, Lottie immediately dismisses her fleeting hope. Upset, Bihan wonders why things seem so easy for her, just as Veronica arrives, calling out to Lottie. Veronica approaches and is shocked to see them both soaked to the bone. Veronica gently chides Lottie for wandering so far, and she meekly agrees. Bihan turns to leave, announcing that he's going inside first. Grip? Lottie clutches his coat tighter, worrying that he must be colder than she is. The difficult day gives way to a starry night over the estate. Wake up. In the dead of night, Lottie's eyes flutter open. Confused, she finds herself standing alone in a vast, empty hall, wondering how she got there. Step. Realizing she is in the main hallway, Lottie decides to turn back. From the shadows, she overhears a conversation echoing through the grand hall. Lottie wonders who is talking so late at night as she hears an unfamiliar voice ask someone why they have come. As Lottie listens from the doorway, she starts to wonder if they are talking about her. She recalls her despair upon learning she was the villainess, hating how the heroine received everything effortlessly. Surrounded by metaphorical thorns, she admits that hearing the truth still hurts. She overhears Bihan coldly suggest that if she wants to play house, she should have done it in her hometown. His cruel words, playhouse, echo in her mind as she sits alone in the dark. Lottie clenches her fists, refusing to believe her father would ever think that way about her. As she walks, she continues her thought, considering what it would mean if he did think that way. She imagines Damien confronting Bihan, finishing her thought about him referring to her as someone just playing house. Whoosh. In her dreamlike state, a hand suddenly reaches out and grabs hers. She looks up to see Damien holding her hand, his touch sparkling with magic. Damien looks down at her with a serious expression as a gentle power surrounds them. Hit. In her emotional turmoil, she repeatedly strikes his chest, telling him, "I hate you." Teary. Crying, she collapses against him and sobs, "I hate Daddy." The emotional scene dissolves into a blur of tears. She remembers Damien hugging her, recalling his promise to give her a place she could always return to. Damien wonders why his daughter hates him, while Lottie tearfully thinks the reason should be obvious. Grip. Lottie tearfully tells Damien he promised her a home, but his family doesn't welcome her. Damien embraces his crying daughter, gently telling her to stop crying first. Holding her close, Damien thinks about finding the person who told her she wasn't welcome. He asks if it was Bihan, and Lottie silently nods, making him realize he understands the situation now. Lottie looks up with teary eyes, confused by his sudden understanding. She shouts that his advice is useless, but he calmly states he will resolve the misunderstanding first. Damien leans in and reveals a secret. Bihan isn't even adopted. A shocked Lottie reels back, wondering what her father could possibly mean. Later, in the library, she processes the news, unable to believe Bihan isn't Damien's son. Dressed for a new day, she resolves that even so, she can't just ignore him. She concludes that it's impossible for them to get along unless one of them leaves the estate. At her desk, Lottie wonders where Veronica is, having not seen her all morning. Knock. A sudden knock at the door startles her. Lottie hops up from her chair, excitedly thinking that it must be Veronica. Open. She swings the door open with anticipation. Bihan stands in the doorway, calling for Veronica, leaving both him and Lottie completely surprised. Creak. Bihan takes a tentative step into the room. A shot of the estate exterior reflects someone's utter shock at a recent revelation. In the library, a woman in a green dress confirms to Bihan that Lottie is, in fact, the Duke's actual daughter. She asks if there's a problem, and a troubled Bihan admits there are many, as he thought Lottie was in the same position as him. He looks out at another mansion, thinking people from his home would be just as surprised. A flashback explains that demons traditionally find and train noble children to inherit their powers. The Frodium family crest is shown, with the narration stating they were no different. A younger, proud Bihan recalls the moment he was acknowledged by Master Damien. Back in the present, a worried Bihan realizes he has misunderstood everything about Lottie's situation. Knock. Resolved, he arrives at a large door and knocks firmly. Stomp. The scene returns to the present as Bihan decisively opens the door, calling for Veronica and finding a surprised Lottie. Lottie stands at the door, nervously clutching the handle and wondering what Bihan is doing there. Falter. Bihan hesitates, then politely asks if he can come in, confusing Lottie with his formal tone. Now sitting together, Lottie assumes Bihan knows the truth and is here to apologize, while he simply thanks her. Lottie is left completely puzzled, wondering why he came if the misunderstanding is already resolved. Bihan bows deeply to a stunned Lottie, sincerely apologizing for misunderstanding her relationship with Damien. Lottie urges him to get up, insisting it's okay, but Bihan remains seated, still looking troubled. Thinking to herself, Lottie admits she's weak to apologies and remembers he searched for her in the rain. Bihan thanks her for accepting his apology, then reveals he wanted her forgiveness before he leaves. A shocked Lottie asks why he's leaving so soon, and Bihan explains that Damien has ordered him to return. Bihan smiles gently, clarifying he's only acting as Damien's son to be useful in the future. Lottie realizes that since her father is a demon, he needs someone to pretend to age for him. The explanation continues that Damien never intended to marry or raise a child, which is why Bihan was chosen. As Bihan states his purpose was to inherit the Frodium name, Lottie realizes with a jolt that her arrival makes him redundant. Lottie frets that he still has a place as Damien's son, and feels guilty that he has to leave because of her. Bihan tells her not to worry because he has no reason to return, leaving Lottie to wonder what this nonsense means. He coldly explains the Empire will be told he's disappeared or died, so she won't feel uncomfortable anymore. Jump Lottie leaps up, insisting she never said anything like that. Grip. She grabs Bihan's hand, pleading for him not to go, and declaring she doesn't want to steal his place. Looking him in the eyes, Lottie asks if they can just live together as siblings, surprising him. Bihan stares back in stunned silence, and Lottie anxiously wonders what his reaction means. Worry. She hesitantly asks if he dislikes the idea of being her brother. Bihan protests that he isn't Damien's son, but Lottie dismisses his concern, saying everyone already sees him that way. Lottie begins to wonder if he genuinely doesn't want to be her brother, feeling she shouldn't force him. As Lottie looks reluctant, both recall his previous misunderstanding and hatred, and he thinks it would be funny to accept her now. Bihan reaffirms his internal belief that his only purpose is to play a part, not to have a real family. Lean. Defeated by her earnest plea, Bihan leans in, close, and softly admits, "I lost." He gently calls her, "my little sister," deciding to embrace the idea of having a family after all. Lottie is utterly distraught, demanding to know why Bihan left yesterday after promising to be her brother. Damien explains that Bihan just had things to do, but Lottie continues to protest. Damien reminds her that they had trouble getting along and states that Bihan needs to complete his tasks. Worry. Lottie clenches her fists, admitting that they already made up. She sits alone in a chair, looking downcast and defeated. Appear. A shadowy figure suddenly materializes, startling Lottie by saying, "That's not true." Hiss. Lottie jumps away in fear, realizing the strange entity appeared when she spoke of Bihan. Wary. Peeking over a chair, Lottie cautiously asks the shadow creature what it is and if it knows Bihan. The shadow identifies her as its owner, Damien's daughter, and Lottie realizes it's talking about her. Float. When asked if it can deliver a message to Bihan, the shadow's hand emerges and it replies, "Yep." An idea forms in Lottie's mind as she asks if it can send a message for her. Bright Lottie beams, asking it to tell Bihan she was happy he'd be her brother, asserting their bond remains. Far away, Bihan reaches up as the shadowy message finds him. A warm, gentle smile spreads across his face as he receives Lottie's heartfelt words. A few weeks later, Lottie begins a game of hide-and-seek with Veronica in the garden. Lottie finishes her countdown and calls out that she's coming to find Veronica. Searching the estate grounds, she wonders where Veronica could possibly be hiding. Rustle. The sound of movement in a nearby bush immediately catches her attention. Dash. She runs excitedly toward the sound, sure that she has found her target. Peeking through the foliage, she spots a familiar figure and prepares to shout that she's found them. Lottie is shocked to find Bihan instead, who casually greets her in a moment of déjà vu. She runs to him, asking why he's back, and he explains that he has returned for good. Bihan confirms he kept his promise to be her brother after passing his work on to someone else. Lottie realizes why he left, and is annoyed that her father never told her Bihan was coming back. Bihan takes her hand, asking why she's alone and suggesting they look for Veronica together. Lottie playfully whispers to Bihan, asking if he'll cheat by using magic to find Veronica. Bihan bursts into laughter, leaving a completely bewildered Lottie wondering what's so funny. Veronica explains to a curious Lottie why Bihan said he couldn't use magic in the estate. She clarifies that magic isn't blocked, just weakened by a deceptio, allowing simple spells for those accustomed to it. Lottie wonders about fairy tale demons, but Bihan explains that most of those stories aren't about real demons. Lottie reflects on how Bihan has been staying at the estate for some time now. She recalls Bihan's recent kindness, thinking he must feel bad about their rough first meeting. Lottie expresses her delight with a cheerful, "Great!" Unlike in the book she remembers, Bihan is now set to remain as the young master of the Frodium family. Lottie celebrates this new path to happiness, feeling she can finally forget the book's original story. She realizes the story's changes concern not just her family, but the very existence of demons. Deciding to stop worrying, she asks what the beings called demons are, if not actual demons. Clink. Veronica opens a teapot, revealing flowers, as Lottie learns about the existence of cambions, half human, half demons. Veronica explains that cambions struggle to suppress their powers, which leads to tyranny, making Lottie realize she is one too. Gasp. Lottie panics about losing control, but Veronica reassures her that she lacks the power for that to happen. Phew. Relieved, Lottie understands that her lack of magic powers was why she once doubted she was her father's daughter. Lottie asks if she is still family without powers, and both Bihan and Veronica immediately affirm their loyalty to her. Overjoyed by their support, Lottie marvels at how warm-hearted everyone is. She reflects that while she was once grateful just to be taken in, she now finds herself hoping for more. Lottie realizes the book was an excuse to live quietly, but now she is determined to stay where she is. With newfound resolve, she thinks of this place as my Frodium. In his study, Damien formally concludes the day's meeting with the nobles. A narration explains his new responsibility of organizing and reporting the meeting's agenda. Damien decides to cut his work short for the day. As he delegates the meeting's summary, other nobles gossip that he ended early because of his treasured daughter. One noble sees this as an opportunity to connect with the Duke through his own daughter of a similar age. While the noble congratulates himself on his quick thinking, Damien is solely focused on finishing his work to see Lottie. The noble tries to relate to Damien's hurry, mentioning his own daughter, hoping to build rapport. Damien coldly thinks that if the noble truly understood, he would not be keeping him there. For a moment, Damien reconsiders, wondering if he should listen, since the noble has experience with children. The noble offers to share some parenting tips, but Damien refuses, realizing he has been acting childish himself. As the noble rambles on, he mentions how cute his daughter is when reading, which suddenly catches Damien's attention. The noble is surprised when Damien asks if that was cute. The noble tries to explain himself, but Damien is already leaving, eager to depart. An aide asks if something happened, noting that Damien looked exceptionally irritated as he stormed off. The aide is puzzled, thinking Damien isn't one to typically show his frustration so openly. Damien stares out a window, lamenting that working feels like a waste of time he could spend with his daughter. Whoosh! His eyes land on Lottie happily playing on a swing in the garden below. Resolved, Damien decides to stop working and go to the garden immediately. His flustered aide protests, insisting he cannot abandon his duties just to see the princess. Damien gives him a chilling look, reminding him that his opinion was not requested. In the garden, Veronica gasps in pleasant surprise at the sight of Lottie. Lottie runs joyfully through a field of flowers, looking utterly adorable. She cheerfully compliments Veronica, exclaiming that she looks pretty today too. Bihan watches Lottie play, advising her to be careful while noticing the garden area is new. Bihan asks about Lottie's glowing shoes, and she explains they were a gift from a shopkeeper she met with her dad. Bihan is visibly stunned to hear she went out with her father. While sitting at a table together, Lottie recounts her fun day out, and Bihan offers to have the chef make the treat she ate. Lottie looks puzzled, admitting she doesn't know the name of the dessert she enjoyed. She fondly recalls that the treat was incredibly sweet and cold. Veronica correctly guesses it was cold and sweet, gushing over Lottie's cute description. As Veronica offers to ask the chef to prepare it, Bihan interjects, insisting he will be the one to go. As Lottie watches Bihan, she feels a sense of familiarity, thinking she has felt this before. Lottie suggests Bihan is having a hard time with Veronica, and he's surprised she can tell. Now deeply curious, Lottie asks Bihan how he ended up at Frodium in the first place. Lottie offers to trade stories, telling Bihan he arrived when she was lonely and asking to hear his tale. Looking at a grand fountain, Bihan begins to recount his past, starting from the very beginning. He reveals through a flashback that he came to Frodium to find the person who saved him. Bihan explains he'd hoped to get information by becoming his father's aide, but found nothing, only vaguely recalling his savior had black hair and red eyes. He accepts that his savior didn't want to be found, but smiles, grateful that the search led him to a new family. A woman's voice interrupts their conversation, asking if they are discussing something interesting. Lottie turns around with a bright smile, excited to see that Veronica has returned. Veronica presents a bowl of colorful ice cream, and Lottie joyfully confirms it's the dessert she wanted. Lottie eagerly takes her first bite of the sweet treat. With a blissful expression, she declares that the ice cream is delicious. As the sun shines warmly in the garden, a wave of tiredness washes over Lottie. Noticing Lottie dozing off, Veronica kindly asks if she should take her inside to rest. Lottie refuses, wanting to enjoy the nice day by resting on a nearby bench for a little while. Veronica agrees to stay outside as well, while Lottie struggles to keep her eyes open. Yawn. Lottie gives in to her sleepiness and decides to lean back for a quick nap. Veronica and Bihan realize Lottie is so tired because she skipped her nap and ran around all morning. Bihan quietly tells Veronica not to wake her, watching over Lottie as she sleeps peacefully on the bench. Gasp! Lottie suddenly wakes up, disoriented and wondering how long she was asleep. As she gathers her thoughts, a hint of melancholy crosses her face. Lottie is bewildered to find her father kneeling before her, surrounded by a dreamlike haze of question marks. Damien explains he was just about to carry the sleeping Lottie on his back, startling her with his answer. Lottie wonders if Veronica called him, but she frantically denies it, questioning why Damien is even there. Determined to get a straight answer, Lottie decides she must ask her father directly why he came. Damien simply states that he saw his daughter from his office window. Lottie is baffled by his short and unconvincing explanation. She calls him out, asking why he's here playing around when he should be busy. Flustered, Damien insists that he is one of the busiest men in the entire empire. Lottie playfully asks if he suddenly came to see her because he was bored. An aide with red hair appears, explaining to Lottie that the Duke made time for her despite his schedule, but she remains unconvinced. The aide whispers to Veronica that Damien's attempts to get closer are hurting his reputation, which Veronica quickly dismisses. A mischievous glint appears in Lottie's eye as she decides to tease her father for his obvious denial. Lottie declares she's playing dad's games, causing Veronica and Bihan to burst into suppressed laughter. Bang! Damien slams his hand down in frustration and embarrassment. Mortified, Damien covers his face and tells the others to be quiet while Bihan notes their sudden laughter. Lottie tugs on her father's sleeve, asking if he's really gonna let them make fun of him like this. Damien looks down as Lottie directly asks if he's here because he wants to get closer to her. Lottie cleverly suggests that taking a walk with her will help raise his ranking again. She then announces that the first-place rank belongs to Veronica, leaving Bihan and the aide to wonder about their own positions. Damien crosses his arms and simply asks, "Okay?" leaving Lottie to ponder his meaning. In a swift move, Damien lifts a surprised Lottie onto his shoulders as she declares her intent to work hard for first place. A heartwarming holiday illustration shows Damien with a baby Lottie and a young woman in traditional attire. Damien stands with his arms crossed, repeating his question, "Okay?" as Lottie looks up inquisitively. Veronica teasingly calls Damien a cheater, but he casually replies that he doesn't know what she's talking about. Laughing, the aide jokes that he isn't in the top ranks either as he snips a perfect red rose. Bihan approaches with a charming smile, holding out the rose and offering it as a bribe. Lottie playfully scolds Bihan from her father's shoulders, claiming the garden's flowers are hers while calling her father childish, delighting everyone. A hand presents a beautiful red rose, which Lottie happily accepts as a bribe. Lottie happily accepts the rose, declaring that she likes the bribe. Veronica eagerly offers to plan Lottie's birthday party and asks when it is. Lottie wonders if demons celebrate birthdays, while Bihan and the aide eagerly volunteer to help Veronica with the preparations. After some thought, Lottie sheepishly admits she does not know the date of her birthday. Damien declares that the day she arrived, feeling alienated and alone, will now become her new birthday, promising to make it a memorable one. Lottie considers her father's words, wondering if her arrival day can truly become her birthday. She joyfully concludes that if her dad is always with her, then every day will feel like her birthday. As autumn arrives, Lottie excitedly points out the red leaves to Veronica, who agrees they are pretty. Veronica asks if this is Lottie's first autumn, and Lottie confirms it's her first time experiencing spring, summer, and fall. Lottie explains she only ever knew the constant cold of winter in the forest and found summer too hot, a complaint Veronica finds adorable. Veronica notes that winter is approaching, but Lottie tearfully admits she only wants to experience spring and autumn. In her room, Veronica asks what Lottie wants for her birthday, but Lottie seems confused about how far away it is. Realizing Lottie might forget by the time her birthday arrives, Veronica explains she wants to know her gift wish in advance. Lottie closes her eyes and concentrates, trying to think of the perfect birthday gift. After much deliberation, she gives up with a bright smile, admitting she has no idea what she wants. Changing tactics, Veronica asks Lottie what she wants to do most of all, hoping for a clue. Lottie enthusiastically declares her greatest wish is simply to do things with her family, leaving Veronica to wonder what she means. She excitedly suggests taking a family portrait, like the one in her father's room, or going on a picnic together. Veronica smiles, confident that Damien would be overjoyed to fulfill Lottie's request for family time. Veronica assumes Lottie is worried about her workload increasing, reassuring her that she has less to do while Damien is away. Lottie quickly denies being worried about her, while Veronica silently admits she wouldn't mind more work for Lottie's sake. Lottie earnestly declares that Veronica is also part of her family and is just as important, leaving Veronica stunned. Touched, Veronica realizes she is truly becoming part of a family. As the narration explains, she grew up in a rare, wealthy underworld family. A flashback shows a young Veronica being praised, but a narration reveals her family life was far from peaceful. The flashback shows Veronica smiling over defeated family members. As it's revealed, she was always stronger than her siblings. Her past is shown as a constant struggle, where family members were merely rivals with knives at each other's backs. The scene transitions back to the present, contrasting Veronica's violent past with her peaceful walk alongside Lottie. As Lottie happily points out the rain, a narration reflects on the unconditional love Veronica now experiences for the first time. Worried about her getting wet, Lottie urges Veronica to go inside to get out of the rain. Veronica, however, closes her eyes and enjoys the feeling as if she's being cleansed by more than just the light drizzle. When Veronica humbly suggests a godmother shouldn't be in the family portrait, Lottie reacts with absolute shock and outrage. Veronica quickly clarifies that while a formal portrait might be different, she would be delighted to join them for a picnic. Squeak! The next morning, Veronica gently wakes Lottie from her sleep. A very sleepy Lottie rubs her eyes and mumbles a good morning back to Veronica. With a warm smile, Veronica officially wishes her a happy 4th birthday. Two maids gossip about the grand birthday celebration, remarking that the Duke is going all out for Lottie when he doesn't even celebrate his own. One questions if Lottie is worth the fuss, but another confirms her importance, citing how others who disliked her were dismissed and how the garden was remade for her. The maids put the pieces together, wondering if the princess truly carries the Duke's bloodline after all. Dressed in a beautiful new gown for her birthday, Lottie walks through the newly transformed garden. Bihan rushes into the garden, worriedly asking if he is too late for the celebration. He leans in to give Lottie a gentle kiss on the cheek, wishing her a happy birthday. Bihan then presents her with a large, beautifully wrapped birthday gift. Lottie eagerly asks if she can open it right away, and Bihan happily gives his permission. She pulls out a giant teddy bear and gives it an enormous, delighted hug. While hugging her new bear, Lottie looks around in confusion, realizing she is in a part of the mansion she has never seen before. She realizes the construction she noticed was for a massive, warm indoor garden, allowing flowers to bloom even in the middle of winter. Just then, Damien makes his entrance, and Lottie excitedly calls out to him after handing her new bear to a maid. She looks around expectantly and asks her father where the presents are. Damien smiles warmly, telling her that her gift is right in front of her eyes. Confused, Lottie playfully runs around him, searching for a hidden present and failing to understand his meaning. Damien reveals the entire greenhouse is her present, leaving Lottie utterly confused by his grand gesture. She realizes with a gasp that her father built the magnificent structure just for her birthday. Damien shyly explains he built it because he knew she loved flowers and wanted her to be happy. Overjoyed, Lottie thanks her father, inwardly marveling at how different he is from the scary rumors. Damien adds that Veronica told him about another wish, as Veronica proudly signals her success in the background. As Lottie remembers her other wish, a dark premonition suggests she would have never asked for it had she known the consequences. Lottie proudly declares she's 4 years old now and no longer a child, demanding her rights. Her resolve is tested when Veronica asks to brush her teeth, making Lottie pout that she's still being treated like a baby. Veronica is left bewildered by Lottie's sudden declaration of maturity. Lottie proudly proclaims she can brush her teeth all by herself, much to Veronica's amusement. Standing proudly on a stool, Lottie assures a skeptical Veronica that she can handle it on her own. Lottie finds her father, who calmly informs her that he has something important to discuss. He explains that an artist has completed her special request, revealing an ornate locket that makes Lottie gasp. She recalls asking an artist for a favor, realizing with excitement that her wish has been granted. Damien looks down at the object in his hand, completely puzzled as to what it could be. Lottie opens the locket, revealing a portrait of her mother, explaining she wanted it so she could always remember her. She then presents the precious locket to a stunned Damien as a gift. Damien finally understands her true wish, while Lottie feels a new connection, believing she can now comprehend his subtle communication. She correctly interprets his silent hesitation, reassuring him that she truly wants him to have the locket. Lottie reasons that her father, who has no keepsakes of her mother, needs this memory far more than she does. Visibly moved, Damien brings the locket to his lips and quietly thanks her for the thoughtful gift. Lottie's face lights up with pure joy, thrilled that her father is happy with her gift. The scene shifts to a sunny day where a butterfly catches Lottie's eye, prompting Damien to remark that spring has arrived. Later, during their picnic, Damien looks slightly uncomfortable wearing a flower crown Lottie made for him. Lottie proudly shows off her handiwork, and Bihan quickly agrees with her that the flower crown is lovely. Excited, Lottie announces that her next project is a flower crown for Veronica. She looks around intently, wanting to find the most beautiful flowers for Veronica's crown, but struggles to spot the perfect ones. Lottie promises Veronica a crown made from even prettier flowers later, and Veronica happily agrees to wait. Lottie shields her eyes from the glare, remarking on how intensely bright the sunlight is on this warm day. The camera pans down to a patch of lush green grass dotted with clovers. Lying on her back in the clover, Lottie looks up through the leaves with a sense of wonder. She observes the dappled sunlight and tree shadows, thinking that it seems even brighter here than at the mansion. She explains her game of only stepping on sunlight to a baffled Damien, dramatically declaring, "I died," when she steps into shade. Though confused by her game, Damien considers planting a large tree for her, while Lottie wonders if the greenhouse wasn't enough. Bihan questions why Damien would think she's joking, with both him and Lottie looking utterly surprised. Lottie sits close to her father and explains that the trees aren't special. She just loves watching them with him. Damien listens intently as she clarifies that being with her family is what makes any moment special. With a bright smile, she insists that being with them is far better than any tree and asks to return together again soon. Suddenly remembering her mission, Lottie jumps up, determined to find flowers for Veronica's crown. As Damien watches her, Lottie announces she is leaving immediately to gather the flowers. Damien gently takes her hand, insisting that they should go on the flower-finding quest together. He pulls her into a protective embrace, worrying about her getting lost if she wanders off alone. Lottie insists she will be fine, but Damien worries she will get lost, prompting Bihan to volunteer as her escort. After a moment of thought, Damien quietly gives his consent for Bihan to accompany her. Lottie cheerfully tells the others to wait for her, promising she won't be gone for long. As they walk away, Bihan silently admits to feeling anxious despite the short distance they're traveling. Lottie confidently states she won't get lost due to her forest upbringing, only to stop in her tracks moments later, confused. Her attention is caught by a large, unusual pile of branches just off the path. Bihan explains that some animals weave branches together to create their nests. Lottie worries if the animals are dangerous, but Bihan reassures her that the forest is safe and free of wild beasts. Lottie holds a few sticks, observing that they're too thick and not numerous enough to make a nest. Bihan explains how weaving weak branches together makes them strong, snapping one to demonstrate his point. Lottie is impressed by Bihan's knowledge, noting his explanation about how saliva strengthens the wood. Bihan sheepishly clarifies that he only knows about it because it's a practice in the demon realm. He gently places a pink flower in Lottie's hair, telling her it looks beautiful. Lottie reminds him they're supposed to be finding flowers for Veronica and him, surprising Bihan that she's including him. After Lottie playfully asks if he's retracting his claim of knowing everything, Bihan looks touched and accepts her kindness. Bihan asks if Lottie wants to venture deeper into the forest, and she eagerly agrees, confident she'll be safe with him. Lottie joyfully runs through a vibrant meadow, exclaiming how pretty the flowers are. Holding a large, colorful bouquet, she declares that she has gathered enough flowers. As Lottie cheerfully suggests they return, Bihan's face suddenly fills with alarm. A hand abruptly shoves Lottie forward, catching her completely by surprise. Thump! She tumbles to the ground, crying out as she lands in the grass. Startled and confused, Lottie wonders what just happened so suddenly. A terrifying blurry monster looms over her from the shadows. A small, winged creature with horns stands stoically on a weighing scale. The monstrous figure continues to menace Lottie from her vantage point on the ground. A beast strikes Bihan, and as he questions its presence, Lottie screams his name in terror. Bihan examines his bleeding arm, realizing with dread that the creature's toenails are poisonous. Tears well up in Lottie's eyes as she watches in horror. Bihan's eyes glow with a determined blue light as he prepares to fight back. The beast strikes again, sending Bihan flying as he wonders about the situation. He lands hard but remains focused, knowing there's something more important than answers right now. Slammed to the ground, Bihan resolves that his first priority is to destroy the beast before him. Standing over his foe, the injured Bihan pauses for a moment in thought. The beast's severed arm lies motionless on the ground as a narration confirms the fight is over. He looks toward a shocked Lottie, worrying about how this violent display affects their time together. Bihan fears that his appearance after the battle will make Lottie afraid of him. He looks down in sadness, accepting this painful possibility. A voice suddenly asks if he's all right, and he looks up in surprise. Lottie cries out that she wasn't scared of him, but for him, terrified about what might have happened. Bihan stares at her, stunned and moved by her words. With a relieved smile, he realizes his sister was only worried for his safety and suggests they go back. Lottie rushes to his side, insisting they must hurry back to treat his poisoned arm. Bihan's senses flare up again, and he urgently tells Lottie to get behind him. She looks on as Bihan instinctively moves to protect her from a new threat. A massive white beast with glowing red eyes appears, far larger than the first, as Lottie panics over Bihan's injury. The monstrous wolf glares intently, its target unclear. It turns its attention to the corpse of the first beast lying on the ground. The giant beast lunges, viciously attacking the injured Bihan. Watching him get hurt again, Lottie resolves that she has to help him. Bihan, struggling on the ground, desperately shouts for her to stay away. Lottie freezes, her heart pounding with fear as she stares at the terrifying scene. Bihan urgently yells for Lottie to run to her father, leaving her to wonder what will become of him if she leaves. Realizing she would only be a burden, Lottie turns and flees through the tall grass. Bihan is relieved to see her running to safety, allowing him to focus solely on the beast. He wonders how a beast from the demon world could possibly be in the Empire. Bihan recalls that the gate is supposed to prevent any creatures from the demon world from entering. Resigned, he decides he'll have to sacrifice an arm and hold out until his father arrives. The massive beast closes in for another ferocious attack. Bihan strains against the beast's immense power, letting out a cry of exertion. As the struggle continues, he begins to lose track of time. His strength rapidly fading, he fears he can't hold out much longer. Suddenly, he spots a familiar figure and realizes in horror that Lottie has returned, questioning why she didn't go to her father. He desperately shouts at her, asking why she came back to such a dangerous place. Lottie clutches a bundle of thick branches, her expression grimly determined. She knew she should have run to her father, but she couldn't leave, realizing Bihan's power wouldn't last. A resolute look forms on her face as an idea begins to take shape. She recalls Bihan's earlier lesson about weaving weak branches together and hardening them with saliva to make them strong. With a flash of inspiration, she looks at the branches, knowing exactly what she must do. As the beast lunges, demanding he release her, Bihan desperately tries to pull Lottie away, urging her to run. The forest blurs around them as they flee from the relentless pursuit. They race through the woods, the sound of their frantic escape echoing among the trees. Exhaustion sets in for Lottie as she's carried through the forest, admitting she's tired. Ugh. She finally gets down, gasping for breath, as a worried Bihan watches over her. She admits to herself that the ordeal has pushed her small body to its absolute limit. Bihan glances back nervously, warning her they can't stop because the beast is still following them. She quickly grabs onto him, her expression filled with urgency. He continues to run with her in his arms, shocked that the beast has managed to chase them this far. They find themselves cornered at the edge of a steep cliff, the massive beast blocking their only retreat. Trapped and terrified, Lottie asks Bihan what they should do now. Bihan sets her down gently, and she tries to reassure him, telling him not to worry. He stands resolutely at the cliff's edge, knowing that while the fall would be fatal for a normal human, he can protect Lottie if she clings to him. The beast makes its move, lunging toward them in a blur of ferocious motion. As the beast attacks, a bright flash emanates from Lottie, her eyes wide with shock and determination. She wakes up abruptly on the ground, wondering if she fell from the cliff and lost consciousness. Looking around at the unfamiliar walls, she realizes she's now inside a dark cave. A wave of panic hits her as she looks around frantically, wondering where Bihan is. He offers a hand to help her up, but seeing his badly bleeding arm, she stands and asks in alarm why he's so hurt. She quickly pieces it together, realizing he must have fought the beast and jumped off the cliff just to save her. Bihan dismisses her concern, insisting his injuries are nothing, and that the poison isn't dangerous and will clear in a few days. Lottie furiously rejects his casual dismissal, declaring that his injuries are serious and that it's an unfair situation. Bihan reminds her that he told her to go back to her father, but Lottie retorts that she couldn't possibly leave, knowing he would get hurt. A faint aura glows around Bihan as he stares at her, stunned and touched by her fierce loyalty. She challenges him directly, asking if he would have left if their roles were reversed. He tries to argue that it's a different situation, but when she presses him for a reason, he's left speechless. He finally relents and apologizes to Lottie, admitting he was wrong and was only acting out of worry for her safety. A sudden downpour begins outside, and Lottie realizes they're trapped in the cave until the rain stops. Bihan calls the rain a relief, explaining it will mask their scent from the beast, which makes Lottie ask about their smell. He explains the beast has a keen sense of smell, prompting a curious Lottie to ask what her own scent is like. Flustered, Bihan apologizes for bringing her, but Lottie insists it isn't his fault, as no one could have predicted a demonic beast's appearance. Huddled against the cold cave wall, Lottie asks with a sliver of hope if her daddy will come for them soon. Bihan confidently reassures her that her father is different from masters who treat seeds as consumables and will definitely come to find them. However, Bihan adds that they can't simply rely on Damien and must try to find a way out on their own. He clenches his fist, vowing that, in an emergency, he is the only one who can protect his sister. He steels his resolve, his mind racing to find a solution to their dire situation. Ugh. Suddenly, Bihan groans and stumbles, and Lottie rushes to his side in alarm. Her vision blurs with panic as she holds him, asking if he's all right. He clutches his arm, realizing with a grimace that the poison is now spreading through his system. Lottie places a hand on his forehead and confirms that he has a fever. She worries, realizing that after being hurt so many times, there's no way he could be fine. Delirious, Bihan finds her touch refreshing and dismisses his condition as temporary, as Lottie watches with tear-filled eyes. Meanwhile, Damien arrives in the forest to find Veronica examining a dark, ominous patch on the ground. Veronica kneels, inspecting the strange, star-filled puddle soaking into the grass. She stands and reports her finding to Damien, identifying the substance as a beast's blood. She adds that she's found 2 different sets of footprints, indicating the children were there. Damien anxiously asks if she's found any children's blood mixed in with the beast's. She confirms there's none, but he remains worried as she points out Bihan can't use his full strength here. His eyes glowing red with resolve, Damien declares they must find them, as Veronica silently prays for their safety. Noting the worsening weather, Damien urges they must hurry their search. "Got it, Lord Damien," Veronica replies, as ethereal green blades manifest around her, ready for a fight. Back in the cave, Lottie stands by a stream, believing that more water will help. Splash! She forcefully applies a wet cloth to Bihan's forehead to cool his fever. Bihan weakly protests that her method isn't right, but Lottie misinterprets and promises to do it again. She watches over the unconscious Bihan, hopefully wondering if he'll get better soon after she reapplied the compress. Bihan begins to stir, weakly calling out her name. Delirious, he tells Lottie she can't eat something, leaving her confused by his strange warning. Realizing his semi-conscious state makes him suggestible, she decides to ask him a direct question: why he cares so much for her. Bihan begins to answer, thinking about his complicated feelings of being accepted into a real family. He blurts out that it's because she's cute, leaving Lottie to wonder if the poison has made him delirious. He continues his feverish explanation, listing how she's small, confident, and does whatever she wants. He concludes that the most important reason is that she chose him to be part of her family. Bihan recalls his past, where he only focused on survival and never dared to dream of having a family. Lottie listens to his heartfelt confession, her expression filled with emotion. Cradled in her lap, he vows that he could never let his sister get hurt. Lottie reflects on his words, feeling ashamed for ever having doubted his sincere nature. A small, fox-like spirit appears, noting that Bihan only ever says, "It's okay," to his sister Lottie. The spirit suddenly turns hostile, its snarl startling Lottie as a new danger presents itself. Despite his condition, Bihan immediately pulls himself up and orders Lottie to get behind him. Lottie panics, seeing that Bihan can barely control his own body and wondering how they'll survive. Her attention is drawn by a falling leaf as a new presence enters the clearing. A glowing red magic circle materializes among the flowers just outside their cave. A shadowy figure emerges as dark energy erupts from the ominous portal. A figure rushes through the forest at high speed. Damien arrives at the cave, calling out his daughter's full name, Lottalusha. Overjoyed and relieved, Lottie cries out for her dad and leaps into his arms. Damien embraces her tightly, apologizing for taking so long to find them. Damien praises Bihan for doing a great job protecting her, but Bihan weakly insists he failed. Safe in her father's arms, Lottie curiously asks what happened to the beast. A quick flash reveals Veronica in mid-air, decisively striking down the massive white wolf. Lottie worries about seeing Veronica, but Damien reassures her that it's taken care of. She realizes her father is turning her away to shield her from seeing the bloody aftermath. Damien holds her close, protecting her from the gruesome sight. Against a starry sky, he gently tells her it's time to go home. Elsewhere, A red-haired attendant panics, demanding to know what's going on. Veronica quiets him, explaining that Lottie is sleeping, while Bihan asks Damien who sent the demon beast. Damien explains that all travel through the official gate is recorded, and he'll go to his hometown to investigate. He gently pats Bihan's head, asking if he thinks he's the kind of master to make a patient work. Bihan flusters, insisting that wasn't his intention, and worries about the difficult task ahead. Damien closes his eyes in quiet acknowledgement of the difficult task ahead. He decides to investigate his hometown alone, stating it's been a long time since his last visit. Lottie watches the rain from a window, wondering if it's also raining where her father is. Veronica asks Lottie if she wants to see Damien, explaining he left in a hurry for a serious matter before she could say goodbye. Lottie clenches her fist, thinking that beasts are a big deal to her too, and she can't ignore the book. Deciding she can't reveal the book's existence, she resolves to visit Bihan instead. Surprised, she asks Bihan how he knew it was her, and he replies that he recognized her footsteps. Bihan reflects that while he was hurt more than Lottie, he has now mostly recovered. Lottie playfully asks why he's in her room, and he retorts that he doesn't need a reason to see family. Her expression softens with concern as she asks Bihan about his arm. Bihan reassures her his arm is fine, teasing that the real problem is Lottie's own slow recovery. Bihan says he's glad she came, revealing a delicate bracelet he has for her from a drawer. Explaining he prepared it on his trip, he asks for her wrist so he can put it on her. As he fastens the beautiful jeweled bracelet, Lottie gasps in delight. Lottie stares at the new bracelet on her wrist, her eyes wide with awe. She notices Bihan's earrings, remarking that she's never seen them before. He explains he brought them when he made the bracelet, prompting Lottie to cheekily ask what kind of bribe this is. Bihan holds her wrist gently, revealing that the bracelet contains a little bit of magic. He explains that the bracelet will tell him her location, but only if she wants it to. Lottie confirms she has control, then mischievously suggests hide and seek is dangerous now. Bihan smiles warmly, confirming he doesn't usually know her whereabouts. He silently keeps a secret from her. The bracelet contains other magical properties as well. Bihan turns away, a silent protector watching over his sister. The scene shifts to Frodium's hometown, where a voice greets the master upon his return to a grand estate. Two attendants greet Damien, noting his long absence and their inability to travel to the Empire as he does. As they gossip about preferring the master's absence, a young boy spots Damien and calls out to him. The boy hurries to Damien's side, ready to report on the task he was given. He informs Damien that his investigation found no signs of the gate being used. He confirms there is no record of use, leaving Damien to ponder the mystery. Damien muses that for a demon, there's only one way to cross realms without using the gate. When the boy insists that's impossible for a beast, Damien gravely states the impossible has already happened. His anger rising, Damien vows that as gate manager, he cannot overlook the incident that injured his daughter. Damien's investigation is interrupted as he notices a commotion outside. A man with pink hair appears, telling the attendants to be quiet and questioning why they are blocking his way. As the man unleashes threatening green energy, Damien steps in, demanding he stop menacing his kids. Startled, the man exclaims Damien's name, while a woman beside him looks on in fear. The man chides Damien for not contacting him, but Damien coolly replies there was no reason to. Damien amends his statement, admitting he was about to seek him out for a question. Damien addresses the man as Arthur, who stands ready to listen. Arthur smirks, asking what's going on as a caption introduces him as Arthur Oedicus, the Duke of the Demon Realm. A title reveals Arthur is also known as the eyes and ears of the Demon Realm. A narrator explains that all news, big and small, eventually reaches Arthur. Damien cuts to the chase, asking Arthur if he knows why a demonic beast appeared in the Empire. Arthur acknowledges Damien's reason for visiting, but feigns ignorance about the beast. Damien's eyes flare red with suspicion as he unleashes a powerful magic circle, not buying the act. A powerful surge of dark and fiery energy erupts from Damien's spell. After the attack dissipates, Arthur calmly remarks that Damien's temper hasn't changed. The scene focuses on the intricate details of a glowing green defensive magic circle. Arthur, maintaining his own spell, challenges Damien to dispel his magic as well. Damien lies on the ground, seemingly struck down as Arthur questions how he could not know about such a big issue. Smirking, Arthur maintains his defensive spell and calmly asks why Damien is so angry with him. As his shield dissipates, Damien looks up from the ground with a determined expression. Arthur clarifies he doesn't know how the beast appeared, admitting even those who usually summon them are bewildered. Damien quietly states he also doesn't know how the beast crossed the barriers and entered the Empire. Arthur begins to explain, stating that the Frodium family was never welcomed in the demon realm. A narrator describes Damien Frodium as an extraordinary person who defied expectations. The explanation continues. Damien held a human name, a demon title, and control of the gate, leading displeased factions to vow his downfall. These enemies sought to bypass the gate, planning to destroy the source of Frodium's power. Their first step was to find a way to illegally bring demon beasts into the Empire. Two shadowy figures are shown successfully summoning demonic wolves into a city through a magic circle. Damien asks how Arthur knew, since it was secret, and Arthur reveals the beast appeared where he was. Arthur smiles, glad that Damien's quick handling of the situation minimized the damage. Changing the subject, Arthur invites Damien to stay for a while, mentioning his workers miss him. He cheekily reminds Damien to be nice to his people, who he claims adore their masters. Arthur notes that while his own people seek his attention, the atmosphere around Damien is different. He observes that despite Damien's temper, he treats his people well. Damien cuts him off, announcing he's leaving immediately, which startles Arthur. Arthur protests, asking why Damien is leaving when his workers have been waiting for him. With a firm gaze, Damien states simply that his daughter is waiting for him. Arthur is left utterly speechless, questioning if he heard the word daughter correctly. What? His shout of surprise echoes through the grounds, startling nearby birds. Arthur excitedly grabs Damien, wildly speculating if the demon world will be destroyed, but Damien just confirms he must leave. Puzzled by the reactions he gets, Arthur points out that Damien has children. But Damien dismisses the question. Damien correctly guesses from Arthur's reaction that news of his daughter hasn't spread yet. Arthur privately wonders how the enemies summoned the beast, but declares he can't just ignore this situation. He taunts Damien about who will care for the child, earning a sarcastic thanks for his concern. A woman with light hair is shown as Arthur's thoughts turn to Veronica, noting she doesn't want to return to Otacus. Arthur reminds Damien he'd already chosen a successor, a fact Damien barely seems to recall. Feigning disinterest, Arthur advises Damien to just forget the matter, claiming he isn't interested in weak things. Damien states he never intended to send Veronica back, prompting a frustrated sigh from Arthur. Arthur complains he doesn't understand Veronica, believing she's better off being a succession candidate at home. He argues that working under Damien will not lead to her becoming a successful Frodium. Arthur pivots, suggesting Damien's newly revealed daughter should be his successor instead. Damien flatly refuses, declaring his daughter will be raised as a human, not brought to the demon realm. Intrigued, Arthur correctly deduces the child as half-human and speculates her mother was a witch. With a pained expression, Damien corrects him, stating his beloved was not a witch. The scene shifts to a snowy forest, beginning the tale of a woman with a frozen heart. Rumors about her spread all the way to the demon realm, with every story being different. A flashback shows a younger Damien standing alone in the falling snow. A mysterious woman with long silvery hair was called many names: Hateful Witch, Winter's Witch, Cursed Witch. Amidst the false stories, the narrator reveals her most famous title as Damien faces her. Lottie's mother is revealed, a beautiful woman with long white hair and gentle blue eyes. The scene returns to the present, where Lottie sleeps soundly before murmuring that she's thirsty. Waking up, Lottie grumbles about her sweet dream being interrupted by thirst. In the kitchen, she stands on a stool to get water, urging herself to hurry back to bed. Cup in hand, she freezes, hearing a noise and wondering who else is awake. She realizes no one is on patrol and the servants are asleep, ruling out Veronica. Glint, her eyes widen in shock as a terrifying thought crosses her mind: a thief. Though skeptical that any thief would dare infiltrate the mansion, Lottie resolves not to ignore it and rushes off to investigate. Peeking from behind a wall, Lottie nervously clutches her pillow as she investigates the noise. She spots the back of a tall man standing in the dark, grand hallway. The figure suddenly stops, seemingly having heard something. Lottie freezes in panic, internally debating whether to run away or scream out, convinced she's been discovered. Her fear grows as the figure turns and begins walking directly toward her hiding spot. The man stops and calls out, "Darling," startling Lottie, who instantly recognizes her dad. Damien looks at her, commenting that he didn't expect her to be strolling around tonight. Confused, Lottie wonders why he would think she strolls at night, since it's something she only does during the day. Facing her, Damien agrees they should stick to daytime strolls and asks if she just woke up. Lottie confirms she came for water. Her expression brightens with excitement as she asks Damien when he returned to the mansion, surprised by his sudden appearance. Lottie playfully scolds Damien for not telling her he was back from his trip to the demon realm. She mentions that Veronica had told her he would be gone for a while, making his early return a surprise. Lottie grows anxious, hoping Damien didn't overhear her earlier thoughts about him being a thief. Kneeling down to her level, Damien explains he arrived late and planned to see her in the morning. She asks about his trip, but he vaguely says he just wandered the mansion, teasing that one day without him wasn't enough to miss him. With a gentle smile, Damien points out her offer defeats the purpose, and she realizes he's right. The scene transitions to the long, dark, and empty hallway they are walking down. Lottie clutches her pillow tightly, looking tense and uneasy in the dark. Crash. A sudden loud clap of thunder and a flash of lightning cause her to cry out and grab onto Damien's leg. He calmly asks if she's afraid, but Lottie, still clinging to him, shakily insists she was just startled. Peeking from behind his leg, Lottie remains on edge. Damien looks down, thinking to himself that she is clearly afraid despite her protests. He prepares to lift her. Scooping her into his arms, Damien softly suggests they sleep together for the night. Lottie internally debates the offer, feeling she's too old but admitting to herself the thunderclap rattled her. Trying to act brave, she tells her dad she can sleep alone, and he calmly accepts her decision. Blink, a new thought occurs to Lottie. Perhaps her dad is the one who's scared and needs her company. She looks up at him earnestly and asks if he's afraid to sleep alone during thunderstorms. A brief flashback reveals Damien's true motivation. He remembered she had a near accident during a storm just a few days ago. Back in the present, Lottie looks up at her father from his arms, asking if he will leave her alone. Amused, Damien smirks and makes a mental note that his daughter seems to like big things. Now in his robe, he sits beside her and gently tells her it's time to lie down and sleep. The scene pans across the grand, starlit bedroom. A detailed shot highlights the ornate furniture in the luxurious room. Tucked into bed, Lottie admits she can't sleep, and Damien guesses it's because she already woke up once. Damien sighs softly, turning his head as he lies beside her. He gently pats her on the back, trying to soothe her to sleep. Lottie questions his parenting skills, asking if he's even going to sing a lullaby. Curious, she asks who the first is, and he cryptically tells her to guess, saying it's easy. As he hums, Lottie recognizes the melody, realizing it's a song her mother used to sing. She eagerly asks Damien if he can tell her about her mom, but he deflects, reminding her it's time for sleep. Lottie cleverly insists that his story will be her lullaby, earning a comment on her sweet tongue. Damien gazes at her, silently wondering how to tell the story in a way she will like. A flashback begins, with a beautiful woman with white hair gently calling Damien's name. The woman confesses that while she gave Damien her heart, she was hesitant for some reason. He recalls predicting to his beloved that he would fall in love with someone from her world. Returning to the present, Lottie shares that her mother once told her that he was very affectionate. She asks Damien if he agrees, admitting that she used to think her mother was lying. Drifting off to sleep with a happy smile, she concludes that her mother was right after all. Damien watches her, thinking to himself what a lovely baby she is as she sleeps soundly. Tucked into bed, Lottie sleeps peacefully. Damien lies beside her, gazing at her with a soft, loving expression. He continues to watch his daughter with a gentle smile, feeling content. The next morning, an attendant panics, unable to find Lottie in Damien's room where she was said to be. A shocked Lottie appears, questioning what the attendant meant. She stands before a completely empty space, shouting in disbelief about where her room has gone. Veronica appears, and Lottie frantically asks her what happened to her room. With a bright smile, Veronica cheerfully announces that Lottie's room has been changed, stunning her. As they stand in a new, grand location, Veronica explains she heard Lottie likes spacious rooms. Overwhelmed by the enormous and opulent new room, Lottie thinks her father took her request too literally. She muses that perhaps he gave her a huge room to play in after she claimed to have explored the entire mansion. Veronica clarifies that her old room was too sketchy for Lady Proteum, but this new one can be changed if she dislikes it. She explains that since Lottie has now adapted to the mansion, it's time she moved into the main building. Learning that Bihan's room is also in the main building, Lottie realizes this is a major departure from the original novel's plot. She remembers the scene in the novel where the heroine was relegated to the annex building. Lottie reflects that her growing relationship with her father and the maid's changed attitudes have altered her fate. She recalls the original character's lonely despair and her desperate need for a family, which ended poorly. Her thoughts are interrupted when an attendant announces it's time to meet the Marchioness. Lottie runs ahead, excited to see her tutor, the Marchioness. She thinks about her recent break from lessons to recover from a monster attack, pleased that it means no homework. Lottie, now formally named as Lodalucia, happily greets her tutor, Marchioness Cyrus. Marchioness Cyrus teases her about being absent, but Lodalucia gives her a big hug, insisting she loves her teacher. Chuckling, Marchioness Cyrus pulls out a textbook to review her studies, causing Lodalucia to let out a groan. After the lesson, Marchioness Cyrus praises Lodalucia for keeping up with her studies despite the break. Lodalucia cheers with delight as Marchioness Cyrus announces the lesson is over. As they walk, Marchioness Cyrus playfully asks if Lodalucia is just happy for the break, but she insists she loves her. Marchioness Cyrus smiles warmly before asking Lodalucia if she has made any friends. After some thought, Lodalucia mentions Bihan, prompting her tutor to note her lack of contact with the outside world. A voice suddenly calls out, and Lodalucia turns in surprise to see who it is. Damien appears with a smile, asking if the lesson is finished. Marchioness Cyrus formally greets the Duke, and he acknowledges her in return. With a comically doubled expression of determination, Lodalucia announces she will see her teacher off. Damien joins them, as Lodalucia insists on walking with her teacher, who feels honored by the gesture. While walking outside, Damien asks Marchioness Cyrus how the lesson went. Manhwa. She replies that Lodalucia's happiness at finishing lessons reminds her of her own son. Damien listens intently as Marchioness Cyrus addresses him. Marchioness Cyrus formally requests to invite Lodalucia to her family's mansion. The scene transitions to a grand estate identified as the Marquis Cyrus's mansion. Dressed in a beautiful pink gown, Lodalucia proudly introduces herself as Lodalucia Proteum. She stands beside a boy with dark hair, silently feeling proud for following her etiquette lessons perfectly. The boy observes her, simply thinking to himself that she seems playful. A woman in green welcomes them, revealing that the Marquis doesn't know they are coming. She explains that she planned their visit as a surprise, since the Marquis rarely gets to see him. Lodalucia looks around the new mansion, her eyes wide with awe. Wah! She marvels at the delicate and beautiful estate, impressed by her teacher's home. Lodalucia ponders for a moment, thinking the family name Cyrus sounds familiar. She recalls Damien once dismissing the need for her to learn about noble families, explaining her current ignorance. Turning to Bihan, she asks about the Marquis Cyrus's family, and he explains they command the Empire's greatest knights. He continues, mentioning a rumor that the Cyrus family has secretly harbored a different kind of power for generations. Bihan adds that he also heard his father is personally close with the former marquis. Stunned, Lucia exclaims that she can't believe her father has a friend, which makes Bihan laugh. As she whispers to Bihan about keeping it a secret, Damien's voice cuts in, announcing he heard everything. A man with blue hair, identified as Eustace, turns around in shock, calling out Damien's name. Damien confronts Eustace, who complains that he had to visit because he wasn't invited. Eustace reveals he came because he heard an unbelievable rumor that someone named Dolores was here. Peeking from behind Damien's leg, Lucia is asked by her father if she has something to say. Eustace smiles, calling her a cute princess named Lodi, but she firmly corrects him with her full name, Lucia. Damien protectively holds his daughter and sternly warns Eustace not to use such an intimate name. Eustace then turns to Bihan, formally greeting him and mentioning he's heard much about him from his father. The Marchioness steps in, telling Lucia to go meet her son while Eustace and Damien have a private discussion. Smiling warmly, she reveals her son's name is Joshua and leads the children to his room. Lucia eagerly urges Bihan to follow but stops short, thinking the name Joshua sounds strangely familiar. A jolt of realization hits her as she connects the names, her eyes widening in shock as she whispers, "Joshua Cyrus." She panics internally, realizing Joshua Cyrus is the male lead from the novel and her hopes of escaping its plot are fading. Lucia stands frozen, her expression filled with dismay as the truth of her situation sinks in. The story of the novel flashes through her mind, represented by an open, glowing book. She remembers the novel's depiction of Joshua as a gentle hero surrounded by magical light. A flashback reveals that, contrary to his family's hopes, Joshua lacked the physical stamina expected of an heir. His true talent, the novel explained, was not swordsmanship, but magic. He discovered this magical talent at a young age while among his peers. However, Joshua hid his abilities from the public, not wanting to draw attention to himself. The plot then turned to a day when demonic beasts suddenly appeared and attacked the academy. It was during this attack that Joshua saved the novel's silver-haired heroine. His heroic act captured the heroine's interest, marking the beginning of their relationship. The memory concludes simply, from that point on, they fell in love. Afterward, Joshua ascended to his role as the next master of the powerful Cyrus family. She recalls their story was a fairy tale romance, but with a happy ending only for them, implying a dark fate for the world. Back in the present, Lucia somberly concludes her mental recap of Joshua's story. Eustace chuckles, telling the children to hurry along, confident they will get along as they are the same age. Lucia observes his panicked demeanor and theorizes he doesn't want them to meet his son because Joshua failed to meet his expectations. She glares at Eustace, internally calling him a bad father for being ashamed of his son, which leaves him looking confused. The Marchioness leads them down the hall, assuring them that Joshua is a gentle child who will get along with them. Creak. She opens a door but finds the room empty, wondering where Joshua could be. She asks them to wait while she searches for him, and Lucia agrees. Internally, Lucia resolves not to make her teacher uncomfortable, deciding to be polite for her sake. Bihan reassures the Marchioness that they will wait patiently, and she smiles at Lucia, calling her a good girl. The Marchioness directs them to the guest room where they can rest while she is gone. Before leaving, she warns them not to be startled if they see a cat, as it roams the mansion freely. While they wait, Lucia asks a reading Bihan if he regrets coming. He asks why he would. She explains that Joshua's absence implies he dislikes outsiders and didn't want to meet them. Admitting she feels sorry for her teacher, she says she also doesn't want to meet him, which surprises Bihan. He says he thought she'd be excited to make a new friend, since she's never had one before. She declares she has him, but Bihan points out he's different from a friend, prompting a skeptical "really Tilda" from her. Lucia smartly retorts that he doesn't have any friends either, making him flinch. Bihan defensively insists that he does have friends, a claim Lucia immediately dismisses with a disbelieving "no way." Bihan thinks about how he should have chosen his hometown instead of friends, his foot tapping restlessly. He then smiles softly, continuing to read his book in the quiet room. Elsewhere, Damien recalls attending Eustace's wedding years ago and asks himself if the boy's name is Joshua. His thoughts continue over a backdrop of yellow flowers, remembering he heard good news from the couple afterward. He remembers Eustace's blissful face, but his memory ends on a somber note, thinking about that child. In a flashback, Eustace tells Damien not to speak of a certain matter, insisting Dolores knows nothing, and Damien agrees not to pry. Back in the present, Eustace clenches his fist and asks Damien why he sent so many letters. Damien internally reasons that Eustace's letters only said he wanted to see him, implying nothing urgent had happened. He recalls the Marchioness's formal invitation and her warm smile. Damien confronts Eustace, guessing he had something to say that he couldn't risk writing in a letter. Eustace gravely reveals that demonic beasts have appeared on more than one occasion. He elaborates that the beasts appeared in unpopulated areas and were weaker than usual, so they were handled quickly. He warns, however, that the situation will become difficult if it continues. When Damien asks who knows, Eustace explains it's only His Majesty, himself, and a few surviving knights. Eustace looks intently at Damien, pointedly asking if he truly doesn't know. Damien asserts that since the Protean family guards the Demon Realm's gate, he can confirm he was unaware. With a relieved sigh, Eustace says it's lucky and that he didn't want to doubt him. Seething with quiet rage, Damien realizes that demonic beasts have appeared many times, and he has known nothing, concluding that Arthur has been deceiving him. Damien demands to know when the first appearance was, and Eustace replies it was during a record cold snap in December 2 years prior. A jolt of realization strikes Damien as he tries to recall that specific time. The scene transitions through a cold, snowy memory. A flashback shows a baby Lottie wondering why she wanted to go outside on such a day. Later, as a slightly older child, a sudden thought makes Lottie gasp. The scene shows her standing on a large, unfamiliar bed. Waking up, Lotelucia looks around in a panic, calling for Bihan and asking where he went. She concludes she must have fallen asleep, and Bihan moved her, resolving to find him. With a determined expression, she sets off on her search. Her quest is immediately interrupted when she spots a cat slipping through a doorway. She watches with delight as the cat struts down a grand hall. Utterly charmed, Lotelucia thinks the creature is adorable. She calls out, asking the kitty where it's going. Spotting the cat atop a chandelier, she calls out to it again as it meows back. Lotelucia gives chase, determined to catch up with the feline. Her pursuit comes to an abrupt halt as a hand catches her. She looks up to see a boy her age who is taller than her, realizing it isn't Bihan. The boy, Joshua Cyrus, asks with a start who she is. Now sitting on the floor, Lotelucia introduces herself as Lottie and explains her teacher invited her. Realizing she is Lady Proteum, Joshua politely apologizes for being rude. Lotelucia's world blurs as a sudden thought strikes her. He clarifies that they haven't met this way before, adding that it's amazing to see her again. With glowing eyes, Joshua observes that she doesn't look like Arcelia, leaving Lotelucia stunned that he knows her mother's name. Her thoughts race, recalling that her mother is cursed and trapped within the forest. Knowing only she and her father know her mother's name, she glares as Joshua teases her about her bad memory, angrily retorting that he's the one who didn't remember her. As Lotelucia insists he must have a good memory, the cat returns and rubs against her affectionately. The Marchioness appears, petting the cat and noting it's rare for it to approach anyone but her. Joshua reaches for Lotelucia's bracelet, asking if her family loves her, but she tells him to let her go. Bihan arrives, looking worriedly at Lotelucia and asking where she has been. He formally addresses Joshua as the son of Cyrus, thanking him for looking after his lost sister. Stunned, Joshua calls out for the lady to wait, but Lotelucia just looks back in confusion. Joshua notes Lotelucia's childish habit of referring to herself by name, finding it odd. In a flashback to a departing carriage, Joshua recalls this is the first time he's seen her since that day. He reflects that mentioning Arcelia's name made a difference, and compares Lotelucia to a black cat with a mandible. Recalling a younger Lotelucia, Joshua thinks he wouldn't have recognized her as Arcelia's daughter, because they look nothing alike. He admits to himself that he is glad she doesn't resemble her mother. He remembers Arcelia never revealed her father's identity, only that she was the daughter of a monster duke. Joshua concludes that Lotalucia is not as ordinary as the rumors suggested. Eustace finds his son, stating he heard Joshua met Lady Proteum. Joshua insists he did nothing, but Eustace is more worried precisely because he doesn't know what his son did. With a concerned look, Eustace asks Joshua if he has forgotten his promise. Joshua smiles, dismissing his father's distrust and asking if there is a son as reliable as he is. He confidently promises his father that Dolores will never know and that he will be the perfect son. Joshua sits peacefully on the windowsill, wearing a serene expression. Clang. In a flashback, a very young Lotalucia watches two swords cross with awe. A woman named Veronica practices her swordsmanship, as Lotalucia wishes she were that strong, thinking she could have helped against the demon beasts. The flashback continues, showing Veronica's swift and skilled sword movements. Lotalucia excitedly declares Veronica is awesome and wants to learn, but Veronica tells her she's still too young. With childhood innocence, Lotalucia argues that doing something every day makes you young. Spotting a carriage, Lotalucia excitedly realizes her teacher has arrived and rushes to meet her. She runs with open arms, cheerfully announcing that she came out to greet her teacher. Lotalucia stops in her tracks, surprised to see her teacher accompanied by a young boy. Bihan happily greets Lady Proteum, while Dolores explains she brought her son, with the Duke's permission, because he wanted to meet a lady. Lotalucia asks her teacher if she wants her to have a friend, wondering why Bihan is here, though she knows her father would approve. Bihan and Lotalucia wish each other well, agreeing to be on their best behavior for the teacher. The scene returns to the present day, showing a thoughtful Lotalucia holding a sunflower. Dolores presents a large stack of books for the lesson, leaving Lotalucia dismayed at the amount. As Lotalucia complains about the numerous books, Bihan expresses awe, asking if she always studies with such difficult texts. Bihan feigns concern that the material might be too difficult for her, asking his mother for agreement. Fired up by the challenge, Lotalucia declares she'll study everything and asks for more, impressing Dolores. Dolores thinks to herself that she is glad Lotalucia and Joshua seem poised to become good friends. She reflects on Lotalucia's surprising progress, noting her results are beyond expectations and admitting she was initially worried. In a flashback, Dolores recalls her surprise at being asked to teach basic etiquette. Damien explains he wants her to teach his daughter basic skills like using a knife, believing she is the right person for the job. Dolores accepts the position after Damien clarifies it's mainly meal etiquette, promising to do her best, despite not knowing the Duke had a daughter. She remembers her past anxieties, worrying about being too strict or unable to handle a child. Dolores recalls that she couldn't refuse the Duke's request, and felt worried until she arrived at his mansion. A fond memory shows a tiny, smiling Lotalucia announcing her name is Lottie. Dolores remembers that despite knowing the imperial language perfectly, Lotalucia read a somber line from a book. Lottie proudly demonstrates her reading ability to her teacher, who offers praise. Dolores concluded that Lotalucia's language acquisition was unusually fast, recognizing her intelligence. She remembers her surprise watching Lottie work on complex notes, realizing the child's abilities were beyond her expectations. When Dolores asks if a problem is difficult, Lottie admits that it is, and that she doesn't know the answer. Dolores thinks to herself that of course it's hard. It's a problem meant for academy students. She recalls having to focus intently to solve the problem herself. Dolores feels that observing Lotalucia is like watching her own son Joshua. Lottie triumphantly presents her finished work to her proud teacher. Dolores praises Lottie and suggests they move on to the next book. Back in the present, Dolores looks around the empty room, wondering where Joshua went. Bihan greets someone, noting it's the first time he's seen them since they met at the Marquis's estate. A boy with purple eyes asks what Bihan is doing there, and Bihan explains he was bored from reading and came out for some fresh air. Joshua thinks to himself that Bihan looks special. Standing by a fountain, Joshua asks someone named Confucius if he has time, and Bihan replies that he has no special schedule. Joshua laughs it off, saying seeing Bihan just makes him want to talk more. On a balcony, Lotalusha stretches, deciding to get some fresh air after studying made her head ache. She watches Bihan and Joshua practice with wooden swords, observing that Bihan's form is skilled, not just reckless. Lotalusha recalls seeing Veronica spar with knights, concluding the boys are having a match, not a real fight. Turning to Dolores, she asks what they're doing and reassures her teacher that it's not a fight and will be fine. Dolores trembles with worry, thinking to herself that Joshua has no talent with a sword. Bihan and Joshua clash, their wooden swords locked as they face off with determined expressions. Dolores watches in surprise, admitting that for someone with no talent, Joshua is handling himself far too well. She reflects that Bihan is a skilled trainee who can even face beasts. Dolores remembers reading that Joshua was a weak child, a fact she thought she knew to be true. Lotalusha stares in confusion, wondering how Joshua is able to hold his own against the powerful Bihan. Dolores tries to call Lotalusha away, but she is focused on the scene below, calling out for her teacher. Determined to intervene, Lotalusha grabs a chair, deciding the surest way to stop them is to go down herself. She climbs over the balcony railing, startling Bihan, who looks up and calls out her name. Lotalusha yells from the ledge, telling them to stop because their teacher is worried. Joshua looks up in alarm, shouting for Lotalusha not to risk herself by coming down from the window. She ignores the warning, telling them they must stop before she can get down. Her foot slips on the ledge and she begins to fall. Lotalusha's eyes widen in terror as she plummets from the balcony. Both Bihan and Joshua stare up in absolute horror at the sight of her falling. Having been caught, Lottie blinks as Joshua cheekily asks if this is her first time using a window as a door. Joshua holds Lotalusha securely in his arms as she thinks to herself that he has accepted her. Wriggling in his grasp, Lotalusha admits that keeping her balance was harder than she expected. Bihan rushes to them, thanking Joshua for saving his sister and remarking on his speed, which Joshua dismisses as surprising. Now safely on the ground, Lotalusha asks Bihan for a moment alone to speak with Joshua. The scene shifts to a serene and sunlit greenhouse. Lotalusha walks with Joshua, thanking him for the rescue and mentioning she saw their swordsmanship practice. She gives him a sly smile, revealing a tiny sharp fang. Lotalusha crosses her arms, looking at him with a confident and knowing expression. She recalls a passage from a book stating that because of his weakness, Joshua couldn't even hold a sword. Lotalusha muses that Joshua, the male lead, is the opposite of his book portrayal, wondering if the story is irrelevant. Joshua sighs that Dolores will now be suspicious because of her, prompting Lotalusha to angrily ask why he sighed and why it was her fault. She presses further, questioning his sudden sword practice and noting his poor relationship with Bihan. Joshua points to her wrist, observing that her bracelet has been covered with magic. He stands before her on the path, stating plainly that magic doesn't work in this mansion. Lotalusha glances back at Bihan, wondering why he seems unaffected in a place where magic is nullified. She continues to ponder this inconsistency as they stand in the garden. A memory of how wizards normally feel in anti-magic zones sparks a sudden realization in her mind. Joshua points out that she corrected her brother's name, implying its significance, while Lottie asks if he isn't Joshua. She concludes that, just as he hinted, he must be able to use some form of magic. With a confident smile, Joshua confirms that he can indeed use magic. Lotalusha stares in wide-eyed shock, her pupils glowing with a mysterious light. Joshua asks what's wrong with her reaction, but Lotalusha quickly looks away and says it's nothing. She tightly clenches her small fist at her side, processing the revelation. The scene transitions to a view of a grand Gothic-style mansion. A woman tells Damien that he doesn't seem to be in a good mood, and he confirms that something is wrong. Damien sits with a grim and thoughtful expression. Kneeling before a pouting Lotalusha, Damien gently asks her what's wrong and if she can tell him. Lotalusha rests her head, wondering how her father could possibly believe her if she told him the truth. In a flashback, Damien recalls Lucia telling him that a book prophesied she would die at age 11. He remembers her explaining that the world is following the book's events, a ferocious beast flashing in his mind. The memory of a young boy's worried face appears as he recalls her desperate plea, asking what she should do. Damien remembers telling her that if she didn't want to talk about it, he wouldn't press her. Back in the present, Damien holds Lucia closely, telling her he hopes she will never forget his words. He forbids her from going anywhere, especially to the demon realm, without a word like she did before. Damien laughs warmly, feeling happily tied up by his affectionate daughter, who hugs him tightly. Noticing his unfamiliar outfit, Lucia asks where he is going, and Damien assures her the Imperial Castle is the safest place. He elaborates that since a demonic beast appeared in the capital, the castle is the most secure location for a child. As they approach the magnificent Imperial Castle, a formal announcement heralds the arrival of the Duke of Frodium and his daughter. Lucia marvels that the castle is larger than their mansion, so Damien playfully offers to rebuild their home to be even bigger. An older man with gray hair bows deeply, asking if this is Damien's daughter and stating it is an honor to see her. Lucia is surprised, wondering if her father has friends, as she had assumed he didn't. With a bright, cheerful smile, Lucia waves to the onlookers. A man and woman are completely charmed, remarking on how adorable the Duke's daughter is. A group of nobles fawns over Lucia's cuteness, eagerly asking if they might have a handshake. Before they can get closer, Damien swiftly scoops Lucia into his arms, pulling her away. He carries her away from the adoring crowd, who can only wave as they depart. Lucia looks over his shoulder and asks why he ran, and he explains they must go see His Majesty. Holding his daughter, Damien worries that bringing Lucia was a mistake, and that she will be exhausted. Elsewhere, Joshua confronts a man with blue hair, asking why he followed him when he wasn't supposed to. The man explains that since Joshua is the successor to the Marquis' family, he wanted to see these things for himself. The man tears up with pride, marveling at Joshua's sudden change in attitude. He recalls Joshua's recent interest in swordsmanship in Princess Frodium, a change he attributes to Joshua maturing. Overcome with emotion, the man remembers Joshua declaring his intent to prepare a successor and following him to the castle. The man, Joshua's father, tells him to behave since they're outside, but Joshua insists he listen since his mother approves. Joshua's father asks an acquaintance what is happening at the castle, and the man identifies him as the Marquis of Cyrus. The man informs the Marquis that the Duke of Frodium and his daughter are visiting, and Joshua's eyes light up, realizing Lucia is here. The Marquis of Cyrus confirms he is also there to see the Majesty, and Joshua happily takes his hand, eager to go. At the audience chamber, a guard stops them, stating that His Majesty is in a meeting and they must wait. An attendant politely informs the Marquis that his son is not permitted to enter the audience room. Joshua smiles serenely, replying that he will wait outside, thinking he only came to see Lucia anyway. He recalls being unable to do something because of Lucia's pained expression. He wonders what kind of expression she could have made if she truly couldn't remember him. Joshua clenches his fist, thinking it's a pity but that there's nothing he can do about it now. The scene shifts to Damien standing before a grand throne, offering his greetings to the ruler of the empire. A blonde-haired emperor greets Duke Frodium, remarking that it has been a while. The emperor observes that Damien bears no resemblance to the previous Duke Frodium, and Damien simply agrees. Damien reflects that their relationship has grown distant since the emperor, who knew him as a prince, ascended the throne. His thoughts drift to the nature of ambition and power. A memory shows Damien in a dark hood, vowing that as the demonic heir to the Frodium dukedom, he will manage the demon realm's gate. He thinks grimly that without this heavy responsibility, he could have defied everything. The emperor notes that he heard Damien brought his daughter but doesn't see her, prompting Damien to acknowledge the rumor. The emperor confirms that he did indeed hear the rumor. Damien expresses surprise at the emperor's interest in his affairs, which the emperor affirms. The emperor explains his interest by stating that the rumor about Damien's daughter had spread everywhere. Surrounded by thorny imagery, the emperor's thoughts reveal that while the Frodium family can inherit the throne, only Lotta Lucia is human. He expresses his hope that she will become the next duchess precisely because she is not from the demon realm. Damien's expression darkens as he considers the emperor's implication that only humans can be trusted, wondering what he plans to do. The emperor's expression is fraught with worry as he contemplates the situation. Walking away, Damien's thoughts turn to the demon realm, resolving not to be deceived for siding with humans. In a memory, the emperor sits on his throne, recalling the harsh treatment he's received from humans who know his true origin. Damien confronts the emperor, asking what worries him, while the emperor questions Damien's loyalty to the imperial family. With his red eyes glowing, Damien declares that he is the only demon left for humans. Back in the present, Damien formally asks the emperor why he was summoned to the throne room. The emperor reveals the topic is demonic beasts, but Damien dismisses it, stating that demon realm matters are not his concern. Damien acknowledges this but points out that while demonic beasts are near his territory, the gate of Frodium has remained untouched. He grimly concludes that there must be something wrong with the barrier separating the empire from the demon realm. The scene transitions to the magnificent, sunlit hall of the imperial castle. Waiting outside, Joshua thinks to himself that Lotta Lucia must have passed through this very hall at some point. The Marquis of Cyrus greets Joshua, wondering why the Duke is present, but Lotta Lucia is nowhere to be seen. Damien appears, and Joshua politely notes that they met recently when he visited his mansion. Damien asks where Lotta Lucia is, and the Marquis questions why he is asking them, assuming they were together. A sudden panic crosses Damien's face as he demands to know what happened. A flustered guard quickly reports that the princess had gone off to explore the imperial castle. Meanwhile, Lotta Lucia wanders through a garden, deciding it's far more exciting to explore a new place by herself. A light-haired man watches with a thoughtful expression as Lotta Lucia toddles off on her own. Lotta Lucia cheerfully greets a group of ladies who are delighted to see the princess. She throws her arms wide with glee, declaring her solo adventure a miracle. She decides to continue straight ahead on the path. Looking for a landmark, she hopes to find a path that she recognizes. Her eyes widen in awe as she stops and looks up at something incredible. She stands before a massive, sun-drenched tree, completely mesmerized by its size. She thinks to herself that the sight of the beautiful tree has cleared away her negative thoughts. Lotta Lucia reflects that in the book, she never went out like this, wondering if depression kept her isolated. A young boy in a white uniform suddenly appears, asking who she is. The boy stands before her in the garden and asks again who she is. He explains with a serious expression that this is a restricted garden that no one can enter without permission. Lotta Lucia looks up at the boy and innocently asks if he is the garden manager. The boy smiles warmly, accepting the title of manager and expressing his pleasure in meeting her. Putting a finger to her lips, Lotta Lucia asks if he can keep her trespassing a secret. She sheepishly admits that she was already scolded for climbing out a window. He agrees to keep her secret, revealing that he holds the highest position in the garden. Lotta Lucia introduces herself as Lottie and asks for his name in return. The boy seems momentarily taken aback by her question. He extends his hand with a charming smile, introducing himself as Johann. Johann offers to show Lottie around the garden, volunteering to be her escort. He gestures to the giant tree, explaining that it's the biggest one in the entire imperial castle. Johann reaches toward a high branch, wistfully saying that he'll be able to touch it once he's grown a little. He gently takes Lottie's hand as they stand together beneath the great tree. Lottie beams with happiness at her new friend. Johann tells her she can visit any time to see him. Lottie sits down suddenly, and when Johann asks what's wrong, she wonders if her worries are that obvious. Realizing she was thinking about the book, she internally debates whether she can confide in someone else. She concludes that she can't even tell the people who know her best about her situation. Deciding it's not her business, she still asks Johann if he knows a way to avoid death. Johann is surprised, remarking that it's too far-fetched for someone so young to be thinking about death. He dismisses death as a divine principle, but Lottie insists she will die not of old age, but from an incurable, unidentifiable disease. Lottie begins to cry, panicking that she's explained it badly and will be seen as abnormal. Johann pauses, thoughtfully considering Lottie's desperate question about death. Lottie becomes flustered and confused, wondering aloud what she was even about to say. Johann puts a finger to his lips, thinking to himself that finding a way to avoid death isn't impossible. A quiet moment passes between Johann and Lottie in the sunlit garden. Stunned, Lottie looks up at Johann and asks him to repeat what he just said. Johann reveals that others have tried to avoid death before, but notes with a somber look that they all failed. By the tree, Lottie quickly claims the story isn't about her, but about someone she knows very well. A man with red hair arrives, and Johann tells Lottie he must go, expressing his happiness at having met her. Left alone, Lottie suddenly realizes she is lost and regrets not asking for directions before Johann departed. She decides her only option is to leave the garden and find someone to help. Noticing the setting sun, Lottie panics, admitting she's afraid of the dark and needs to hurry. Determined, she resolves to go home for dinner with her father and Bihan and begins to run. She stops short as she spots a familiar figure, thinking, "Oh, you are here." It's Joshua, who explains that he followed his father, referring to him as Eustace. Lottie immediately scolds Joshua for calling his father Eustace, deeming it disrespectful, but he retorts that he likes it. Joshua correctly guesses that Lottie is lost, but she defiantly claims her father is the lost child she's looking for. He smiles warmly and offers to lead her, confidently stating that he knows where the Duke is. Joshua extends his hand, and Lottie simply stares at it for a moment. They walk together hand in hand as evening approaches. Lottie walks with a pensive and slightly awkward expression. Joshua asks what's wrong, and she wonders why he's staring, but he is thinking about her prior interest in him. Lottie thinks her interest was only because he seemed different from the book, deciding she won't be interested anymore. She declares she's not a child, but Joshua just teases her, affectionately calling her little princess. He grabs her hand again, prompting an annoyed Lottie to ask why he keeps making her angry. As they walk, Lottie suddenly recognizes the path they're on. Joshua turns to her, stating that even if she doesn't remember him, he doesn't care. He looks away with a gentle smile, wondering aloud what he can do about her memory loss. Lottie thinks of Joshua's name, worriedly concluding that if he keeps acting this way, she will become a bad person. The two stand together beneath the trees, a moment charged with unspoken feelings. Joshua turns to her and pointedly asks if she truly doesn't remember him at all. They gaze at each other, hands clasped, in a warm, ethereal glow. A flicker of memory surfaces, and Lottie thinks that she's never seen that person before, looking at Joshua with new eyes. In a flashback to a silent, snowy forest, narration recalls a longing sound breaking the quiet. A younger Lottie, dressed for winter, calls out that a lizard king is there. A promotional banner encourages readers to visit the website. Back in the present, Lottie looks utterly shocked, thinking, "No way." She internally panics at the thought of Joshua being the giant lizard, but he corrects her, declaring he is a dragon. Lottie remembers her past life, where she suffered from an incurable disease. The scene briefly shifts to a peaceful view of the sky through the trees. A vision of Johann appears, his expression pained as he looks at her. Lottie's thoughts reveal a horrifying truth. She can sustain her life by taking Joshua's heart. Recalling Johann's warning not to trust a desperate person, Lottie realizes his words meant that a dragon dies without its heart, implying she must hurt Joshua to live. Joshua notices her troubled expression and asks why she looks that way, but she nervously dismisses his concern. He leans closer, looking puzzled by her strange behavior. They continue their walk along the path under a lamppost. Lottie asks Joshua why he is looking at her and wonders if she has something on her face. Joshua beams with joy, realizing from her question that Rhodalucia hasn't forgotten him after all. Lottie admits it makes sense that she didn't recognize him right away. The camera focuses on their intertwined hands. Joshua reflects that while he has grown, Lottie's hands have remained just as small as he remembers. In a flashback, a younger Lottie recalls the distinct warmth of an injured creature she identifies as a king lizard. Her mother gently chides her for wandering off alone, but Lottie's attention is fixed on the creature she decides to name Mary. Lottie worries that the injured Mary looks sick and asks her mother if they can help him. Her mother simply scoffs, seemingly dismissive of the creature's plight. Addressing the creature, the mother coldly states that she would have let it die if not for her daughter's compassion. She explains to the creature that Lottie is concerned for its injuries before pointedly asking why it has come to their land. The mother reveals she has met the creature before, while it internally muses that dragons don't grow while they sleep. When she asks if it's been asleep since its brother died, the dragon's eye flares with fury as it internally accuses her of the murder. The tense memory shifts to a sweet one, showing an innocent Lottie gleefully hugging the large dragon's snout. Lottie asks if they're playing and wants to join, and though her mother refuses, Lottie insists she'll play with the dragon. Relenting with a soft smile, her mother encourages the dragon to play, teasingly comparing its sleeping habits to another dragon named Nylon. The dragon looks away, slightly annoyed, thinking to itself that it shouldn't be compared to mere animals. After her mother insists king lizards are animals, the creature rears up and declares it is a dragon, which Lottie comically mistakes for its name. Lottie gets the dragon's attention by playfully pouting and calling out to the lizard. Her mother encourages the dragon to show Lottie some magic, prompting it to wonder if that's what they truly want. The dragon relents and turns to Lottie, asking her what she would like to see. As Lottie has never seen one in her winter forest, the dragon conjures a beautiful glowing butterfly that leaves her mesmerized. As Lottie climbs happily onto the dragon's back, both her mother and the creature caution her to be careful. Lottie's mother watches the two of them play together with a fond, gentle expression. Joshua recalls how Lottie tenderly nursed his wounds with her own medicine until he was healed. Lottie playfully demands a thank you, proudly declaring that she was the one who applied his medicine every single day. When she mentions she can't leave the forest to see him again, the dragon promises that he will come to her instead. Lottie gives the dragon a sweet kiss on the snout as he asks Rhodalucia to remember his words. Back in the present, Joshua realizes he should head back, thinking that the Marquis and Dolores must be worried about him. A brief flashback shows a much younger Joshua, studying alone at a desk under the watchful eyes of his family and staff. Joshua reflects that after losing his brother, he fell into a long sleep that left him forgotten by most of the world. He recalls that after waking up, the child he met in the forest was the only new friend he made. The memory of a younger, happier Joshua smiling as he shakes hands with someone flashes through his mind. Lottie looks back at him, her expression dazed as she processes the sudden rush of shared memories. Lottie breaks the reverie by asking Joshua what he was thanking her for, leaving him momentarily flustered. Her mood brightens instantly as she spots two figures in the distance and joyfully exclaims, "Daddy!" Wah! Overcome with relief and happiness, Lottie runs toward her father with her arms outstretched. Damien sees his approaching daughter as a surprised Bihan looks on from beside him. Joshua gently admonishes Damien, asking him how he must have felt when his daughter went missing in a strange place for the first time. He admits that while he knew Lottie would be safe in the palace, he was still surprised when she disappeared without a word. Lottie looks down guiltily, apologizing for surprising everyone, and softly asks her father if he is angry. Damien gently pats her head, reassuring her that he isn't angry, only worried, and asks her not to do it again. Turning his attention to Joshua, Damien formally thanks him for finding Rhodalucia and for helping her previously. Joshua sees an opportunity, thinking to himself that this new connection is too valuable to simply let pass. Seizing the moment, Joshua cheerfully asks Damien if he can continue to visit Lottie, now that they are friends. Joshua beams, excitedly promising to visit their mansion more often, to which Damien coolly replies he will inform the servants. Both Lottie and Bihan stare in utter shock at the sudden and unexpected arrangement. At the Frobium mansion, an attendant announces to her lady that a guest is arriving. A woman named Veronica laughingly tells Lottie her visitor is here again, teasing that she doesn't even need to ask who it is. Lottie eagerly dashes off, calling back a cheerful goodbye to Veronica as she runs to meet her friend. Joshua became a fixture at the Frodium mansion. visiting so regularly that he would join Lottie for her lessons and come on his own. While relaxing in the garden, Joshua playfully asks Lottie what she's thinking, and she bluntly replies that he should stop coming. Joshua confidently points at her, declaring that she's lying and secretly loves playing with him. Lottie suggests Joshua should visit his own mansion for a change, but he simply replies that his father is too busy. Joshua asks if Lottie must go with the Duke, revealing he came alone, while she worries about getting her father's permission. Joshua rests his chin on his hand, musing that he understands her father is just being overprotective. He explains this is because the mansion is surrounded by a magical barrier. Lottie states there is no need for magic, unconcerned about not being able to use it for a while. Joshua looks slightly surprised by her casual acceptance. Analyzing a glowing magic circle, Joshua notes the barrier is looser than expected. It only forbids magic from outsiders, not residents. He concludes that anyone who uses magic within the barrier will automatically have tracking magic cast on them. Lottie finds the tracking magic excessive, but Joshua reassures her that it's probably not because of him. A worried Lottie asks if the barrier was already there before he arrived. She recalls her first day at the mansion when her mother's magic circle vanished and her father instantly appeared, having sensed the magic. Joshua is impressed, remarking that even a dedicated wizard family wouldn't have such a sophisticated setup from the beginning. Lottie questions why he doesn't have connections to wizards for his huge mansion, and Joshua concedes that she has a point. Thinking aloud, Joshua observes that the magical formulas look like they were created by a skilled student. He elaborates that the barrier is incredibly neat, unlike the messy ones made by people without proper skills. He turns to Lottie, confidently announcing that he thinks he can remove the barrier for her. Joshua beams with pride, promising to show her his magic again once he succeeds. Lottie grabs his hand, frantically telling him to stop, because she doesn't understand magic and fears what he's doing. As a carriage arrives in the background, Joshua announces that he has to leave. After he departs, Bihan approaches Lottie and asks if Joshua has gone back home. Bihan waves cheerfully in a brief, pleasant memory. Lottie confirms Joshua returned to Cyrus, then asks Bihan where he is heading. She expresses regret that he wasn't outside with them earlier. Bihan turns to her and bluntly asks if she dislikes Joshua. He voices his suspicion that Joshua is getting too close to her family, warning her that he doesn't seem like a good child. Lottie listens to his concerns with a thoughtful expression. She reaches out to him, asking if he's acting this way because she has become close to Joshua. Bihan is flustered by her direct question, unable to form a coherent reply. While Bihan stammers a denial, Lottie giggles, certain that she was right. She reassures him that she understands why he feels that way, and might even feel the same herself. Bihan looks on, still slightly embarrassed, as she continues to speak. Lottie playfully winks, declaring that if he became friends with Joshua and left her out, she would be even sulkier. Changing the subject, Bihan asks why she came to see him in the first place. An attendant informs Bihan that Joshua is waiting in the reception room, dismissing him as Lottie watches from a chair. Later, the attendant thanks Lottie for getting along so well with Joshua. Lottie nonchalantly replies that they are just playing together as friends. The attendant explains with a sad smile that Joshua was born very weak, and doctors predicted he wouldn't live long. She recalls her worry, explaining that he could hardly make friends even as he grew up. She reveals that since meeting Lottie, Joshua's health has improved so much that he's even started swordsmanship, leaving Lottie pensive. The attendant quickly dismisses her heavy talk, telling Lottie she is too small to understand and can leave first. As Lottie walks away, the light catches her shoe, and she wonders what truly happened. In the dark hallway, Lottie realizes with a start that the weak Joshua her father mentioned and the powerful one she knows are completely different. In a brightly lit room, a boy who looks like Joshua sits reading a book. Lottie enters the study, asking if his class is over since it ran late. As the boy turns, Lottie stands with her hands on her hips and demands to know where he went. Seeing his distinctly reptilian eyes, Lottie points accusingly and declares that he is not Joshua. She stands before him in the grand room and demands to know where the real Joshua is. The boy sits with his arms crossed, annoyed, insisting that he is Joshua, and asking if another one even exists. Lottie clenches her fist, firmly stating that the Joshua she knows is the friend she made. She recalls the attendant's words, remembering that she claimed not to know Joshua was a dragon. A textured background appears, with narration suggesting that Joshua, born to the teacher, was different for some unknown reason. The imposter Joshua reflects on the fake who has taken his place, coolly wondering if it's important. Lottie softly asks about the real Joshua, accepting that there must be a secret reason he can't tell her. The boy reassures her, confidently stating that this is his place and she shouldn't worry. He tells her it's all right to feel relieved, but Lottie continues to look up at him with uncertainty. Placing a finger to his lips, he playfully asks Lottie to keep his identity a secret from Dolores. The narration notes the strange atmosphere that followed as the boy gazes thoughtfully out a window. A flashback reveals an immense ethereal blue dragon floating in a dark cosmic void. In the past, a man with blue hair pleads with the dragon to listen to his wish, realizing it must be a descendant of the one he knew. He introduces himself as the fifth descendant, Eustace, and the dragon acknowledges that it already knows who he is. The dragon questions why it was woken, then asks Eustace if he has brought a dead child to him for help. Eustace looks on in anguish, explaining that his wife is being driven mad by her grief. While a dragon's heart can save a human, it is not a cure-all and can fail. Eustace grimly accepts this risk. The dragon casually tells him to consider it a hobby, warning that it cannot change a human's entire fate. With tears streaming down his face, Eustace begs the dragon to at least let his son live to see adulthood. In the present, Lottie stands with a vacant expression, surrounded by a pattern of cheerful yellow chicks. A boy with ashen hair asks if she is tired, and Lottie admits she couldn't sleep from thinking too much. Lottie recalls the imposter Joshua's request for secrecy, deciding she can't even tell Bihan about it. The boy thoughtfully suggests that if she's tired, she should try sleeping during the day. He sweeps Lottie into his arms, insisting that she needs to rest. In a cute sequence, the boy and his clones gently tuck a sleepy Lottie into bed. Lottie pouts that she isn't sleepy, but he calmly insists that she will fall asleep soon enough. He suggests she lie down with him until he falls asleep, but she can leave after. He asks if he's a stranger to her, stammering slightly as he speaks. Having lulled Lottie to sleep, the boy quietly leaves her room. Lottie dreams of two maids whispering about how shameless it is for a non-biological child to be there. As the maids discuss her mysterious arrival, Lottie's memory of staying home alone surfaces in her dream. A younger Lottie stands in the hallway, overhearing one of the maids question the other's words. The maids gossip, reasoning that since the Duke has no lover, Lottie can't possibly be his biological daughter. They conclude that being kept in an annex means Lottie will soon be kicked out of the Frodium estate. Young Lottie's voice echoes in the darkness, insisting that her mother told her he was her father. Lottie wakes with a start from her nightmare, grabbing the boy's collar in her sleep. The boy is startled as he finds Lottie clutching his shirt, managing a confused greeting. He asks her what kind of dream she had that would make her attack him so suddenly. Realizing what she's done, Lottie quickly lets go of his collar and apologizes. He asks if she had a nightmare, and Lottie sheepishly admits she had a little one. The boy smiles gently, explaining he was just waiting by her side while she slept. Lottie tiredly rubs her eye, still processing the remnants of her bad dream. When he asks about her dream, Lottie thinks to herself that it was a memory of that difficult day. She reflects that while she felt she did nothing wrong in the dream, the situation itself was infuriating. Lottie decides her dream self's angry reaction was justified, but reminds herself not to act that way in reality. She views her dream actions as those of a typical angry child, recalling the scene with the maids. She then questions whether expressing justified anger is ever truly a simple act. An open book floats before a backdrop of astrological charts, symbolizing fate or knowledge. Lottie sits in bed, concluding that the conflict with the staff likely worsened over time. She worries that her past actions created a reputation for her as the Duke's villainous-like daughter. A memory flashes of a different girl with white hair, who is also the subject of servants' gossip. Thump. Back in the present, Joshua impatiently tells a pouting Lottie to stop being silly and play. Joshua playfully complains that he has to practice swordsmanship daily because of her, while Lottie notes it's been a while. Lottie playfully suggests that the Marquise intensified Joshua's training because of her. Joshua defensively denies this, boasting that his training was increased because he is particularly outstanding. Lottie teases him, saying if he's so good, he should know how to perform moderately well sometimes. He complains that despite coming to see her every day, she doesn't seem to welcome him. Joshua presses further, asking if she isn't happy to see him and wishing she would be warmer. He looks away sadly, announcing that he won't be able to visit as often anymore. Surprised, Lottie asks if it will suddenly be difficult to see him starting next year. Joshua leans back, explaining it's not a sudden decision and has been settled for a while. He reveals that Dolores is sending him to the academy, leaving Lottie stunned. The news of the academy hits Lottie with a jolt of realization. Narration describes the academy as a dream destination for noble children aged 9 to 11. Admission is exclusive, requiring either a high title or immense wealth. It is explained that surpassing these requirements with outstanding talent is another way in, making it natural for Joshua, son of Marquis Cyrus, to attend. A portrait of Joshua holding a sword is displayed under the family name Cyrus. Lottie stares in disbelief, realizing she had completely forgotten about this part of the story. She suddenly recalls that Joshua is the male lead of the novel she's living in. She knows that at the academy he is destined to meet the heroine, Dahlia, and the story will proceed as written. Composing herself, Lottie quietly acknowledges his upcoming departure for the academy. She forces a cheerful expression, saying it's great and he must have many preparations to make. Lottie points out that since he dislikes trouble, dealing with so many people must be difficult for him. Unimpressed by her mundane reaction, Joshua asks if that's all she has to say. Lottie tries to downplay the separation, noting that semesters are short and he will still be at Cyrus often. Joshua looks hurt, questioning if that is truly her only reaction to them being unable to see each other as often. The scene transitions with a view of a soft, cloud-filled sky at dusk. Lying in her bed later, Lottie admits to herself that she honestly hopes he doesn't go to the academy. She worries that if Joshua leaves, she will be left with no friends at all. With newfound resolve, she hops off the bed, declaring that she has made a decision. Lottie stands proudly, surrounded by a floral aura, and announces her intention to go to the academy too. Her father gives a stern, one-word answer: no. Lottie whines, pleading with her father and insisting she wants to go to school. He counters her excitement about meeting people by stating she can do so after her debut. She reflects that her father has never been so firm in his refusal before, Lottie argues, confused as to why he's stopping her when the academy would surely accept Frodium's daughter. Her father turns his back on her, definitively stating that she is not allowed to leave Frodium. Defeated, Lottie stomps away, irritably announcing her departure from the room. As she leaves, a man with red hair wishes her a nice day and she awkwardly greets him as Bellant. Bellant chuckles to himself, commenting on Lottie's clumsy exit. He turns to the Duke, asking why he didn't just tell Lottie that he was worried about her. The Duke explains that hostile forces, believing the Deceptio barrier had weakened, were sending demonic beasts, and he is trying to stop them. Menacing red eyes flash behind him as he contemplates the threat of the demon beasts. He grimly notes that the enemy's plan has escalated from sending beasts over the barrier to having them pass through on their own. Bellant confirms from his desk that this outcome was expected. While the Duke notes the children's long-term efforts, Bellant reports that none of their attempts were successful. The Duke declares that not only demon beasts, but also magic must be stopped from entering the human world as a fiery battlefield is shown. He resolves that for his daughter's safety, he cannot allow this threat to succeed. Elsewhere, Lottie appears with a thoughtful and determined look. Approaching a woman she calls Madam, Lottie asks if she could go to the academy even if she's not an official student. The woman gently explains that it would be difficult, as outsiders are forbidden for security reasons. When asked about her sudden interest, Lottie admits she wants to go play there since Joshua will be attending. The lady Lottie is speaking to confirms that Joshua did say he was going to the academy a few days prior. She explains that he had originally decided to go because the academy offers a high standard of education and social opportunities. She then reveals a twist. Joshua later declared he wouldn't go, leaving Lottie completely baffled. The lady recalls how Joshua stubbornly refused, arguing he could achieve more with his studies at home. Lottie remembers Joshua's logic that his swordsmanship training could simply be increased if that was the concern. A cute but determined expression crosses Lottie's face as she processes this new information. She realizes the stories don't match, wondering why Joshua would tell her he was going if he had already decided against it. Clenching her fists in frustration, she silently vows to get answers from Joshua Cyrus for his confusing behavior. In a flashback, Bihan states that he values his family more than having friends. A young Lottie confronts him, asking if his distant behavior is because she is close to Joshua. Bihan recalls thinking it would be nice for Lottie to have a friend since she was always confined to the mansion. He remembers hoping they could become friends and wondering how to convince his father to allow Joshua to visit more often. Bihan reassures himself that, for now, Lottie still likes him more than she likes Joshua. His expression darkens as a thought crosses his mind. I really don't like it. Back in another scene, Bihan gives Joshua a cool greeting. Joshua politely returns the greeting, mentioning he thought Bihan wasn't around since it had been difficult to see him. Bihan coldly rebuffs him, stating it's rude to visit so often and telling him to stop coming. The sound of hurried footsteps echoes through the hall. Lottie rushes between the two boys, calling out Joshua's name to stop their tense exchange. She arrives looking confused, asking what they're doing together, while Joshua greets her warmly as Lottalusha and asks about her class. Joshua thinks to himself that he's realized Lottie would be more comfortable with him than with Bihan. Lottie misinterprets the tension, concluding that Bihan must want to be friends with Joshua, but is going about it all wrong. Oblivious to the underlying rivalry, Lottie cheerfully asks the two boys what game they are playing. She presses them about their conversation, but Joshua smoothly deflects, saying it was nothing, and they were just waiting for her. Lottie internally panics, thinking they've become close already, then immediately dismisses the thought with a firm no. Joshua presents a strawberry cake, explaining he brought it for her, and Lottie gasps in delight. Thrilled, Lottie says she loves eating sweets after studying, and Joshua smiles, telling her to enjoy it. An attendant interrupts to inform Bihan that Sir Damien is calling for him. Joshua asks what's wrong with Bihan, and Lottie whispers that she thinks he wanted to be friends with him. Lottie asks Joshua why he was in such a rush earlier, then realizes she'd forgotten all about it because of the cake. With renewed purpose, Lottie angrily confronts Joshua, demanding to know why he lied to her about the academy. A genuinely confused Joshua asks her what she's talking about as they stand in a sunlit garden. Lottie explains that the lady told her he had decided not to go, and she demands to know why he told her the opposite. Joshua looks on, his expression shifting as he listens to her accusation. Joshua breaks into a wide, triumphant smile. Lottie is taken aback, utterly confused by his cheerful reaction to being caught in a lie. He leans in, admitting he's glad she was surprised, then teasingly asks if it's because she doesn't want him to leave her. Smiling, Joshua clarifies that it wasn't a complete lie, as Dolores did initially decide to send him to the academy. Lottie argues that he's just teasing her, leading to a playful quarrel before he apologizes with a laugh. Joshua gently pokes her cheek, asking if she's happy now that he's not going. Lottie yells that it's not good at all, while Joshua laughs, pleased that his hunch about her feelings was correct. As night falls, narration ominously reveals that another person will be coming to the academy soon. In a different scene, Lottie gives Bihan a tight hug. An attendant proudly announces that Bihan has received a certificate of admission as the best freshman, while Lottie sobs into his shoulder. Lottie tearfully begs Bihan not to go, worried that if he leaves, she'll only have Joshua to play with. She questions why he needs to go to the academy when he's already so brilliant at everything. Bihan gently comforts her, explaining that her father might want to form future partnerships with people from the academy. The attendant adds that to inherit the throne, Bihan must strive to become even better. Lottie asks if he'd still have to go if she became a duke, and he sweetly replies that he'd have even more reason to go, to serve her better. A gentle hand pats Lottie's head as she closes her eyes. Bihan hugs Lottie, promising to return during his holiday. An attendant announces the wagon is ready, and Lottie's father nods, saying he will be right out. Dressed in a formal red and white uniform, the Duke gazes out a sunlit window. With a determined look, he decides he must leave immediately. Lottie appears, asking where her father is going and correctly guessing the palace. The Duke notices her puffy eyes, and Lottie admits it's because she cried so much last night. Noting her runny nose as well, he kneels to help her, while Lottie looks glum. He reflects on how upset she was, crying all night simply because Bihan is moving to the academy. He recalls that Belant was also very worried, wondering how to cheer her up, but Lottie insists she's feeling better now. Lottie asks if he absolutely has to go to the palace, and he confirms it is for business. She questions why he goes so frequently, asking if the emperor knows his weakness. He cryptically explains that while the emperor doesn't know his weakness, the situation is similar to that. The Duke reveals that without this leverage, a man from the demon tribe like him could never have inherited the ducal position. Lottie proudly says she knew, recalling that the previous Duke asked him to take over the family's administration. Smiling, he clarifies that was merely his chance, as inheriting the title is not so simple. He explains that since they can't get everything they want, he made a treaty with the emperor. Instead of inheriting the throne, he swore an oath of loyalty to the royal family. He explains the Protean family's long and vital history in maintaining the empire's dominance. However, he reveals that the family has long been hiding the existence of the demon tribe. If the emperor were to expose his identity and the family's secret, the House of Protean would collapse. The Duke grimly states their reputation would be erased, and they would become hated enemies of the empire. Lottie listens with a somber expression, absorbing the heavy truth. Looking up at her father, Lottie says with certainty that he really loves Protean. He gazes down at his daughter, his expression serious. A faint smile appears as he quietly agrees with her. Lottie perceptively notes the paradox. Swearing loyalty to protect Protean has made everything he loves a target. Calling his little daughter thoughtful, the Duke pulls her into a hug, adding that the emperor remains afraid of him. He calls this fear good news, as people imagine the demon tribe to be inhumanely bloodthirsty monsters. Cradling Lottie, he confesses that just hiding his secret is exhausting, and having more weaknesses would be unbearable. With a gentle, reassuring smile, he promises that he will be back soon. A grand white carriage departs, bathed in golden sunlight. Deciding to play ball with Bihan, Lottie walks through the hall alone now that her father has left. Lottie finds Bihan with a woman named Veronica, asking where they are going in their nice outfits. Veronica smiles, explaining that she's going shopping to prepare for Bihan's admission day at school. Intrigued, Lottie eagerly asks to join them on their shopping trip. The scene shifts to a picturesque street lined with colorful shops. A glimpse into a boutique window reveals a beautiful, sparkling dress on a mannequin. Veronica, Bihan, and Lottie pose together amidst a backdrop of vibrant flowers. Lottie looks around the town, remarking that everything feels strange since she's only visited twice. Standing with Bihan, she wonders aloud what they should buy first. Veronica reveals a very long shopping list, stating they have to buy everything on it today. She cheerfully announces their first stop is a clothes store, and they'll tackle the rest of the list afterward. Inside a boutique, a saleswoman greets them and, correctly assuming they are there for uniforms, invites them to follow her. A well-stocked closet is filled with a variety of elegant dresses. Lottie looks around the room, feeling a sense of familiarity about the place. Standing alone in the shop, she wonders if she came here with her dad before. In a brief flashback, she recalls seeing many beautiful dresses but couldn't try them all on. She remembers her father's stubborn solution was to simply buy everything for her. Lottie recalls that the place where they are trying on uniforms seems to be the same shop she visited with her father. Veronica enters the fitting room, telling Lottie she needs to speak with the tailor for a moment. An off-screen voice instructs Bihan, calling him Dandy, to stand still and raise his hand. A tailor measures Bihan, explaining that newly enrolled students should wear comfortable, pre-patterned uniforms fitted to their size. She continues to adjust his outfit, warning that a uniform that's too loose is both inconvenient and unattractive. Holding a notepad, the tailor remarks that many young noble sons will be attending the academy this season. She smiles warmly, admitting that her little joy is seeing the young students enter the academy in their long-sleeve blazers. The tailor tells Bihan that a well-fitting uniform will make him look taller, though he will need a new one if it gets too tight. Bihan agrees, thoughtfully noting that he has been growing taller lately. 3 young noble girls peek from behind a curtain, watching Bihan with fascination. The girls whisper excitedly, one of them urging the others to look at him. As Bihan shines in the light, one of the girls internally declares him handsome. The girls continue to gush, saying he looks like he's from a romance novel and realizing he's their age and will be entering the academy. Lottie observes the commotion, thinking Bihan is indeed handsome, while the girls excitedly realize they might meet him at school. Imagining the future, Lottie crosses her arms and figures Bihan would get dozens of confessions at the academy. Feeling down, Lottie worries about Bihan going to the academy without her and hopes he meets a good person. Her thoughts are interrupted when a voice greets her, causing her to look up in surprise. A boy with brown hair asks if she remembers him from when they first met. The boy shyly asks Lottie if he can sit next to her. Lottie happily agrees, and the boy thanks her as he takes a seat beside her. The 2 children sit together quietly on the couch. Blush. The boy's cheeks turn red as he sits next to Lottie. Lottie glances at him, wondering why he's looking at her like that. Assuming he's as bored as she is, Lottie thinks to herself that she's tired of looking at clothes. The boy correctly guesses someone in her family is going to the academy, surprising Lottie with his insight. He explains his reasoning. She appears too young to be enrolling herself. He adds that the shop is always busy with students at this time of year, so he couldn't think of another reason for her to be there. Lottie confirms his guess, admitting she just tagged along. Lottie completely misreads the situation, concluding he was staring simply because he needed a seat. Muttering, the boy quietly mumbles something about his maternal uncle having seen it. Lottie looks at him quizzically, unable to hear what he said. As the boy covers his face, Lottie's curiosity is piqued by his masked expression. He sighs in resignation, seemingly thinking about his own situation. Bihan returns, asking Lottie if she's bored, while the other boy simultaneously calls her gorgeous. Lottie reassures them she's fine and asks why Bihan is waiting. He explains they'll be a bit longer due to the number of customers. Bihan smiles gently at Lottie, telling her to come back to him and call if anything happens. Lottie asks the other boy if he and his brother are close, but he admits their relationship isn't very good. An attendant appears, and the boy announces he's finished and must go first. Blushing and flustered, the boy waves goodbye, promising to see her at the academy. He rushes off before Lottie can say anything, leaving her watching him go. Lottie looks toward the fitting room, realizing Bihan still isn't done. She peeks inside, wondering if Bihan is talking to someone he's meeting for the first time. A blonde-haired girl cheerfully asks Bihan his name, hoping they might meet at the entrance ceremony. With a neutral expression, Bihan plainly states his name. Startled, the girl recognizes him as Prince Bihan and eagerly hopes they'll be in the same class. Coldly, Bihan shuts her down, stating it's too early to discuss such things since school hasn't even started. He turns to leave, informing her that the staff will notify him about his order. Lottie watches this exchange with a worried expression, wondering why he's acting so cold. Arms crossed, Lottie resolves to say something, feeling that as his family, she can't accept his rude attitude. As a man steps forward, Lottie wonders who he is. A man with a mustache grandly introduces himself to Princess Proteum. Interrupted by the noise, Veronica and the tailor question the mention of Proteum. The man asks Lottie if the Duke is coming, and she explains she's there for her brother's uniform fitting. Unable to stand the tense atmosphere, Lottie announces she's going out for fresh air and rushes away. Panting, Lottie runs through the town streets. Whew. She stops outside, catching her breath and feeling alive again. Deciding she wants to look at the building for a bit, Lottie's curiosity is piqued. She spots a groggy-looking girl with white hair, worrying that she's hurt and about to fall. Just as she feared, Lottie watches the girl lose her balance and fall. Lottie rushes to the girl, kindly offering her hand to help her up. The girl looks up and quietly thanks her. She looks at Lottie with wide eyes, remarking on what a kind person she is. A pink-haired girl gazes lovingly at a man in a formal red uniform. The white-haired girl again marvels at Lottie's kindness for helping her. The girl wonders aloud if Lottie is just like her own mother. Lottie privately notes the girl shares her mother's hair and eye color, looking young enough to be her. However, she reflects that her own mother doesn't have such cold, distant features. She remembers her mother's smile, which is as warm as summer. The girl takes Lottie's offered hand, confirming she wasn't hurt in the fall. Lottie asks why she's being stared at, but the girl dismisses it as nothing. Lottie contrasts the girl's stoic demeanor with her own mother's variety of expressions. The girl asks if Lottie needs help, but Lottie replies that she is fine. Lottie smiles, cheerfully saying how lucky that is. The two girls hold hands. They stand facing each other, a quiet connection forming between them. The white-haired girl seems startled by something. She internally questions why she feels compelled to act this way. A woman nearby worries, wondering where her child suddenly disappeared to. The woman calls out for someone named Dahlia, and Lottie realizes she is standing right in front of her. Thumping. Lottie's heart pounds as her eyes widen in shock. Dahlia explains that her mother is calling and she has to go, thanking Lottie one last time. Dahlia turns and answers her mother's call. Lottie is stunned, realizing that Dahlia is the name of the heroine from the book. She recalls the story. Dahlia is the doll-like adopted daughter who will replace her after she dies. She remembers the book clarified Dahlia has a cold, emotionless face but a warm heart that attracts everyone. The story also mentioned that Dahlia had always been seen around the Proteum estate before her adoption. Lottie recalls that after her book counterpart died, her father offered to adopt Dahlia, needing a child. In the story, the Duke explained to Dahlia that he needed an heir and the arrangement would benefit her. It was a life-changing opportunity for Dahlia to rise from a poor viscount's daughter to a princess. Lottie remembers her father looking sincerely sorry during his offer in the book. The narration reveals it was the family of Viscount Lopez who brought Dahlia to the Duke's mansion. A shadowy figure tells Dahlia to go back, but she stands her ground. In the story, Dahlia was essentially sold to the ducal family. Despite being in a strange place, she quickly adapted to her new life at Proteum. It was as if she had been prepared for this role all along. Lottie remembers the book's harsh comparison. While the original princess died and was deemed evil, Dahlia lived on, seen as a gentle and dignified goddess. The story concluded that it was inevitable for everyone in the mansion to fall in love with Dahlia. Staring after the departing girl, Lottie is certain she has just met Dahlia from the book. A woman arrives and gently chides Dahlia for wandering off, and Dahlia apologizes for making her worry. The woman clutches her chest in relief, prompting Dahlia to ask if her mother has a headache. Dahlia calmly reassures her mother that she is only a little dizzy and will be fine. The woman gently insists Dahlia tell her if she's in pain. Dahlia promises not to worry her. Lottie recalls a crucial detail. In the story, Dahlia was abused by the Lopez family. She watches them go, noting their affectionate relationship seems to completely contradict the book's narrative. Doubts fill Lottie's mind as she wonders if this is simply a different person with the same name. A menacing, demonic shadow fills the frame as a narrator despairs over being powerless against world-ending beasts. Veronica finds Lottie standing outside, announcing that she had come looking for her. Veronica smiles brightly, explaining that she's here to help Lottie try on new dresses and browse catalogs. Bihan appears and apologizes for the long wait, asking if they should head to another store. Lottie's thoughts return to the earlier scene, questioning why Bihan behaved so coldly toward the other girl. Lottie asks Bihan what happened just now, and he seems surprised that she witnessed his interaction, mumbling. Lottie mutters to herself that while a girl seemed interested in Bihan, he was as cold as the wind. Veronica smiles knowingly, telling Lottie that Bihan is only ever gentle when he is with her. Bihan promises to listen if Lottie tells him to be kinder, but she worries he'll struggle to make friends. Grouse. At a new shop, Lottie tells the others she is going to buy a notebook and some ink. A shopkeeper confirms that they will have large furniture such as a bookshelf delivered to the mansion. Lottie holds up a small, clear orb and asks Veronica if she can buy it for her. Identifying it as an oracle stone, Veronica asks Lottie if she really needs to purchase it. Lottie smiles and confirms that she needs to give the stone to someone. Returning to the grand estate under a sunset sky, Lottie happily announces that she is back. Her father kneels to greet her, gently scolding her for going to the village without his permission. Veronica assures the Duke that she is fully prepared and has bought all the necessary items. As her father looks thoughtfully out the window, Lottie prepares to make a request. Lottie interrupts him, announcing that she has a favor to ask. A small child with peach-colored hair reaches out to tug on someone's sleeve, asking for their attention. Her father turns his attention to her, calmly asking what she needs from him. Faltering and hesitating, Lottie nervously insists that she doesn't hate studying and actually likes her teacher. Glitter. With shining eyes, Lottie asks her father if she can take a break from school for a while. Her father smiles warmly, stating he will grant any of her requests, but must first hear her reason. Lottie explains that she feels sorry for Bihan and wants to spend time with him before he leaves. She formally asks for permission to take days off from her studies until Bihan goes to the academy. She hesitates, thinking that if she keeps worrying, she won't be able to concentrate on her lessons anyway. Her father playfully questions if she's threatening him with her inability to study, which she quickly denies. He smiles and agrees to give her time off, promising to inform a man named Cyrus tomorrow. Lottie joyfully thanks her dad and excitedly runs away. Veronica comments that Lottie will miss Bihan, but reminds the Duke it isn't as if he will never return. The Duke explains he has already adjusted his daughter's schedule so she can spend time with Bihan. He reflects that it might be better if the boy who often visits doesn't come by for a while. In another home, a boy with black hair asks his mother if it's the day to go to Protium. A woman with black hair explains that Miss Protium will be taking a few days off. Surprised by the news, the boy resolves to go and ask Lottie's full name, Lodelucia, what's wrong. Swish. He turns to leave on his own, but his mother quickly calls for him to wait. Cluck. She hesitantly informs him that for now there is no need for him to go there. Thunderstruck. The boy is frozen in disbelief at his mother's words. The scene transitions to a wide shot of the Protium mansion at night. Inside, an off-screen voice wonders why Joshua hasn't been visiting lately. Lottie looks up from her book, agreeing and pondering if it's because their teacher is also absent. Tap. As Lottie reads, Bihan leans in closer, happily thinking that he gets to monopolize his sister. The book describes a village suffering from a severe drought, where elementalers received help from elves to pray for rain. A hand reaches toward a celestial star, symbolizing the prayer for a miracle. Lottie, sitting with Bihan, exclaims that it's a miracle story. She thoughtfully questions the story's authenticity, recalling that she had heard about elementalers existing in the old days. A narrator explains that long ago, some people, like the elementalers, could recognize both humans and demons. Lottie marvels at the idea, finding the story of elementalers truly magical. Veronica arrives to announce it's bedtime, and Lottie bids Bihan goodnight, promising to see him tomorrow. Alone, Bihan decides he should pack his things for school before going to bed. DRRK? As he packs, he mutters to himself that tomorrow is already arriving too fast. Looking at his new academy uniform, Bihan reflects that he's known about his admission since being adopted. A wave of sadness washes over Bihan's face as he thinks about his departure. Bihan stands alone, admitting to himself that he doesn't want to leave Lottie, knowing she would just play with Joshua otherwise. Lottie peeks into Bihan's room, quietly asking if he's asleep yet. Bihan tells her he's still awake and asks what she needs, and Lottie admits she feels sad thinking about him leaving tomorrow. With a hopeful look, Lottie asks if she can sleep in his room for the night. Bihan invites her in, asking if she informed anyone, and Lottie confirms she already told Veronica. Lottie complains that the academy is being excessive by making him leave so long before the entrance ceremony. She continues, pointing out the inconvenience of not being able to use teleportation magic to travel to and from the academy. Bihan explains that the strict travel rules are in place to ensure the safety of all the students. He adds that the policy is also for fairness, considering students from families who cannot afford teleport magic. Lottie understands, agreeing it's a natural way to handle things, and that the academy should prioritize student equality. Her expression is pensive as she processes the reality of their impending separation. Tucked into bed beside him, Lottie makes Bihan promise to return for every single vacation without fail. With his eyes closed, Bihan gently tells her not to make a crying face like that. He looks at her warmly, telling her that her smile is the most beautiful thing. The narration confirms they both slept well, as the grand mansion is shown under the night sky. The next morning, a voice from off-screen informs Prince Bihan that his carriage has been prepared. Bihan nervously wonders if he'll do well at the academy, but a red-haired attendant assures him there will be no problem. Reassured, Bihan smiles and agrees that he will likely be fine. He reflects internally that while his father is currently the powerful Duke of Proteum, he doesn't know how the political situation might change in the future. He resolves to guard against any potential threats by building a strong network of relationships within his generation. He worries that his efforts will be for nothing if he doesn't fulfill his role properly. As they walk to see him off, Lottie sadly wishes Bihan could just stay one more day. Her father tells Bihan to stay safe, and Bihan promises he won't let his dad down. The Duke watches him leave, privately worrying about the intensity he sees in his son. He reflects that while he won't force Bihan's path, he senses a futile and perhaps dangerous determination in his heart. Bihan stands solemnly before the gates, ready to depart. His father looks on with a complicated, gentle expression. A small child with peach-colored hair tugs on a sleeve, asking the reader to continue to the next chapter. As Bihan stands poised to leave, his father's thoughts about his son's futile determination linger in the air. The Duke watches his son with a warm but concerned look, the sunlight dappling through the trees. Leaves flutter on a branch against a clear blue sky, marking a moment of transition. Bihan recalls that his father, Mr. Damien, never actually forced him to go to the academy. Realizing his father respects his choices, Bihan smiles warmly and silently tells Damien not to worry. As the carriage pulls away, Damien notes with relief that his daughter's eyes are not swollen from crying. Lottie puffs out her cheeks, asking if he thinks she cries all the time, determined to smile for Bihan's sake. Damien laughs, telling her she's so proud, but Lottie insists he not tease her. He praises her for her composure, explaining that she did a good job not making their guest feel awkward. Lottie asks her father which guest he is referring to, and Damien reminds her she took time off for Bihan. Thunderstruck, Lottie freezes in shock as her father announces that her lessons will resume today. From the mansion, Lottie's indignant cry of, "What the hell?" echoes into the sky. In a study, a voice asks if it's true that the prince has already left for the academy. A teacher suggests Lottie must be sad, but Lottie resolves to be strong like Bihan was. Pleased with her determination, the teacher smiles and prepares to begin their studies. Lottie looks up attentively and asks about the book she was assigned to read. The teacher presents a magically glowing book, revealing that it features elementalers. She explains that the book, written by elves long ago, mentions countries that no longer exist. The lesson continues, explaining that the number of elementalers has declined over time for unknown reasons. The narration elaborates that without the proper lineage, it is impossible to hear the voices of the elves. Lottie thoughtfully connects this to the gradual disappearance of demonic beasts and the demon race. Her thoughts are interrupted as she glances outside, noticing an unfamiliar carriage. As the day's lesson concludes, the teacher praises Lottie for her hard work. The teacher notes Joshua's absence, and a surprised Lottie immediately asks if he is sick. With a slightly strained expression, the teacher explains that Joshua simply wanted to stay home today. Lottie stands alone in a grand, shadowed hall, quietly processing the information about Joshua. Later, Lottie complains to a lady-in-waiting that the Prince of Cyrus, Joshua, has stopped visiting. She points out that he even missed a class day, which is unusual since he always follows the teacher. The lady-in-waiting smiles knowingly and playfully asks Lottie if Joshua is mad at her. Confused, Lottie asks what she means, and the woman reminds her of her request to spend time with Bihan. She reveals that Damien sent a letter directly to the Cyrus estate, requesting that the prince not visit for a while. Understanding the situation, Lottie accepts it, saying that it's okay. The scene transitions, showing the grand mansion on a bright, sunny day. At another residence, a voice offers a white cat named Mia a ball of wool she likes. Joshua stands with his face in shadow, stating that he told him not to go to the mansion. Grip? Fuming, Joshua thinks to himself that his small joke resulted in immediate and annoying revenge. He glances out the window, wondering about the identity of an approaching carriage. HMPH. Annoyed at the thought of having guests, Joshua decides he needs to find a place to hide. Hiding in a parlor with the cat, Joshua reasons that guests for Dolores or Eustace wouldn't come there. His reptilian eye scans the room as he wonders what kind of guest would come to this specific area. Whip. The white cat suddenly turns and walks away with purpose. A young girl in an elegant dress greets the cat, calling her Mew Mew. Joshua is stunned to see Lucia, who cheerfully greets him after he calls her name. Flustered, Joshua asks why she came to Cyrus and wonders how she found him there. Cuddling Mew Mew, Lottie teases him, noting his dislike of guests is the same as her first visit. Joshua asks if she came by herself, but Lottie explains she came with Veronica at her father's insistence. HMPH. Crossing his arms, Joshua pointedly asks why she came after telling him to stay away. Lottie explains it was her father's request, not hers, though Joshua dismisses her excuse internally. Eagerly, Lottie rummages through her belongings, announcing that she even brought him gifts. Joshua scoffs haughtily, declaring that as a dragon, he can't be bribed with presents. Sullen, Lottie's expression falls as she glumly says that it's over then. She reveals a beautiful, sparkling orb, the oracle stone from the shop. In a flashback, Lottie asks if a messenger stone allows communication with someone far away. Veronica confirms it's possible, but only if both parties are stationary and know each other's location. Back in the present, Joshua holds the orb, identifying it simply as a messenger stone. Lottie expresses concern that his family must be displeased with him, coming to visit her alone so often. With a confident wink, she explains that with the messenger stone, his solo visits won't be a problem anymore. Joshua stares at her coldly, reminding her that though he is small, he has lived for hundreds of years. Sitting across from her, he asks disdainfully if she thinks a mere messenger stone can make him happy. Lottie earnestly pushes the messenger stone towards him, insisting he just try it once. She explains that with the stone, they can talk any time without her having to wait for his visits. Joshua looks away, quietly processing her thoughtful and practical reasoning. The focus shifts to Lottie's elegant dress and determined posture. With a bright, hopeful expression, she declares her simple wish to give him the message stone. A different child with orange hair appears, asking the reader to continue to the next chapter. Internally, Joshua smirks, concluding that Lucia clearly can't manage without him. He formally accepts the messenger stone with a thank you, much to Lottie's surprise. Joshua explains that his mansion has no toys, since he is a dragon, which Lottie finds boring. Changing tactics, Lottie asks if he at least has paper and colored pencils. The two now sit together at a table, quietly drawing side by side. Joshua glances over at Lottie, a thoughtful expression on his face. Lottie explains that a woman named Arcelia takes the best care of her and even told the other maids to treat her well. She recalls in a flashback how the other maids ostracized her, viewing her as a nuisance. Joshua listens with a concerned expression, remarking that the maids were the same with him. Lottie confirms sadly that the maids at her mansion also disliked her. Surprised by the similarity in their experiences, Joshua asks if that's really true. The narration notes that Lottie is drawing a picture of Arcelia. Changing the subject, Joshua asks if she has been out of the woods for long, and Lottie confirms she has. Joshua falls silent, his expression turning serious as he pauses. Flinch. Lottie freezes as he suddenly asks if she knows how she was able to leave the woods. Lottie admits she didn't understand what her mother meant at the time. She reassures him that it's okay now with her father there, though she still misses her mother. Joshua suggests that if she needs a mother, her father could simply find her a stepmother. Lottie counters that it doesn't matter, as a stepmother would still be family. She asks Joshua if he would feel the same if a new mother figure appeared for him. Joshua dismisses the idea, explaining dragons are independent. Lottie decides to drop the topic of mothers with him. Curious, Lottie realizes she knows nothing about his family and asks what kind of dragons they are. Joshua looks away wistfully, revealing that he used to have a brother. In a flashback, Lottie remembers a huge dragon and asks if his brother is as big as he is now. He confirms his brother is much bigger. His expression saddens as he quietly admits that he can't see his brother anymore. Joshua tries to act nonchalant, questioning how many times one can expect to meet a dragon, but Lottie looks unconvinced. He forces a small smile, agreeing with his own rhetorical question. A carriage waits in the warm glow of the sun, signaling the end of their time together. Rumble. Riding home, Lottie sits in contemplative silence. She suddenly realizes that Joshua's brother seemed to know her mother. Lottie wonders about the kind of person her mother was before she was born. She pictures her mother's ethereal beauty, wishing she could have asked her about her life directly. The gentle vision of her mother smiles, calling her name tenderly. The memory shifts to an image of Lottie as a baby, wrapped in a warm pink cloak. She recalls her mother's words, promising that her father would take care of her once she left the woods. Returning to the present, Lottie reflects on the sad fact that her mother is nowhere to be found. An ominous atmosphere surrounds the mansion as faint, mocking laughter echoes. A dark memory reveals maids hiding their bullying and tattling on Lottie's every move. She remembers her father never taking action, leaving her to face them alone. A maid's voice from the past complains about the weird child who won't stop crying. A sinister young man with dark hair smirks, vowing to make the crybaby his toy, as an older Lottie's eyes glow red with defiance, thinking she can't take it anymore. Lottie awakens in bed, recognizing she's just had another dark dream. Stretching, she thinks to herself that the maid from this particular dream felt strangely familiar. A maid with gentle brown hair and a kind expression looks back over her shoulder. A younger Lottie approaches the maid, asking if her name is Mary, which she confirms. Lottie lights up with recognition, declaring that she knows Mary as the maid who helped her in a dream. Her expression turns to a sad pout as she wonders why she hasn't seen Mary since then. While tying Lottie's hair ribbon, Mary begins to explain why they haven't met. Mary clarifies that while today was her day off, she came to work because her roommate was sick. She reflects that she's only heard about Lottie secondhand and is relieved to see she's doing well. Lottie beams, exclaiming that she's also happy that Mary is doing well. The two share a quiet, friendly moment, looking at one another. With a hint of worry, Lottie asks directly if Mary hates her. Lottie's mood brightens instantly as she happily announces that Mary will now be in charge of her area. Blink! Mary is stunned into silence by the sudden and unexpected promotion. In a flashback, a young Lottie recalls how she first met the girl she knew. Lottie admits she hasn't had any close maids before and is truly glad to finally have one. Recalling a past conversation, Joshua advises that most staff appreciate kindness and will like her if she approaches them first. Lottie finds the idea embarrassing as Joshua's voice asks if she forgot to recharge her magic while talking to him. The glowing messenger stone rests in her hands, confirming she didn't recharge it during their communication. Taking her hand, Lottie cheerfully invites a surprised Mary to come to her room. As they walk, Mary muses that the rumors must be true. The master must love the princess very much. Lottie offers Mary a cookie, but she politely waves her hand and declines. Lottie insists, explaining it's repayment for the cookies Mary had prepared for her in the past. A voice wonders where Veronica has gone, noting that she is usually with the princess. Lottie explains that Veronica seems to be busy lately following her father around. She recalls her trip to Cyrus, remembering that Veronica was the one who permitted her to see the Marquis. Lottie internally considers having maids other than Veronica to attend to her. With tears in her eyes, she admits her reluctance stems from painful past experiences. Elsewhere, two other maids gossip, expressing surprise that the young lady personally called for Mary. A maid with dark green hair angrily blames the maids who were previously kicked out for spreading false rumors. Mary joins them, offering to share the cookies the young lady gave her. Mary thoughtfully realizes that everyone seems to genuinely like the princess. The scene shifts to the emperor, who states he relayed the same message to Cyrus before asking about demon beast appearances. Damien reports there have been no new incidents beyond the two from last year, which were resolved quietly. The emperor questions whether it's safe to assume the demon beast threat is over. Damien argues that if the threat was truly gone, the beasts wouldn't have appeared in the first place. With grim determination, Damien proposes they announce the existence of the long-forgotten demon beast to the world. The emperor stares in shock, taken aback by Damien's radical suggestion. Damien counters that humans are not as weak as His Majesty believes, and will find a way to fight back. He requests permission to inform the knights in training about the demon beast's existence. A voiceover reflects on seeing the health of previous emperors decline over time. Damien thinks grimly that the current generation's decline seems to be happening even faster. The scene transitions to a quiet moment with Damien and Lottie sitting on a sofa. Damien listens as Lottie excitedly recounts her fun day, expressing her desire to go again. A vision of Lottie's mother appears as a voice expresses gratitude that Lottalucia grew up safely. Lottie's father smiles, thankful that his daughter is growing up healthy and well. He notes the changing of the maids, thinking that they always take care of things despite it being cumbersome. Embracing her father, Lottie thanks him for always checking on her, and he says he's glad she's well. A burst of light erupts as Damien opens a letter sealed with green wax. Lottie's eyes glow a vibrant purple as she recognizes the spell as sealing magic. Damien explains that he uses the sealing magic to prevent anyone else from reading the letter's contents. Lottie looks up at her father, confused by the magic. The magical letter glows, shouting Damien's name and demanding to know how long he'll keep the gate closed. Annoyed, Damien holds Lottie as she asks if the letter is talking, worried he'll burn it again. Lottie marvels at the magical letter, impressed that it knows her father so well. Damien sighs and agrees, and with a pop, the letter vanishes in a puff of smoke. Elsewhere, an elf with purple hair reports to his colleagues that backlash against the gate's closure is growing. Damien explains to the emperor via the letter that the passage is blocked to track demon beasts and find their source. The emperor's voice reminds Damien that despite his love for the empire, he is still a demon. As the letter disappears, the emperor's voice urges Damien to decide where his loyalties truly lie. Lottie asks if her father would choose the demon realm, and if that would cause demons to appear all over the empire. Damien pats her head, reassuring her that as Duke Erodium and her father, he will never turn his back on the empire. With tears in her eyes, Lottie asks if he must return to the demon realm. Damien says he won't, deciding to send Veronica instead as crows fly over the mansion. The scene focuses on a determined and elegantly dressed Veronica. Veronica questions Damien in his office about a visit to Auditus, which he dismisses as unnecessary. She reports that while reopening the gate has eased tensions, hostile demons might still attack. Veronica privately wonders whose side Damien will take if the Empire and Demon Realm become enemies. Damien states his goal is to reconcile the two realms, though he doubts it will happen. Veronica tells Damien that if she had to choose, she would side with the demon realm, as it is her home. She confesses her only concern is that the young lady, Lottie, is a human being. An attendant bursts in calling for the master. Damien turns to ask what happened. The attendant urgently reports that the princess is asking for a doctor, leaving Damien stunned. Rushing through the halls, Damien berates himself for being so careless with her. He worries over Lottalucia, remembering that as a human, she is weak by nature. Damien finds Lottie sitting happily on her bed, completely fine as she greets him. He stammers, asking if she's in any pain after hearing she requested a doctor. Lottie cheerfully declares she has no pain at all, explaining that's not why she called. She explains that she's been having strange dreams and wants a checkup to understand her physical condition and deal with them. Lottie gushes about how amazing doctors are, healing people so quickly without any magic. She continues excitedly saying she's curious about preventative checkups, much to Damien's bewilderment. Internally, Lottie fumes, wondering what the attendant, Bellant, told her father to make him overreact so much. After leaving her room, Damien stands in the hall, resolved to call a doctor immediately. A dark thought crosses his mind as he recalls the worst of those who have departed from his life. Lottie, dressed in a cute outfit with cat ears, innocently wonders what to do. A close-up shows Damien's foot as he curses his situation under his breath. In bed, Lottie wonders if her request was really that surprising, as Damien thinks he should have ended things out of responsibility. Lottie sits up in bed, calling out to her father and asking what he is doing. Damien announces he will be very busy today as he leads a confused Lottie toward a shimmering portal. Lottie stands quietly beside a woman in a formal black dress. A woman with light, sandy hair looks on in surprise, questioning Damien's actions. She reasons that Damien initially treated Lottie warmly because she works for the young lady. The woman expresses her desire to understand what happened, noting that Lottie is very worried. In a flashback, a young girl with pink hair asks Damien how many human deaths he's seen. An older woman replies she's seen many people close to her die. Damien reflects on his throne that a human's life of 100 years is far too short compared to his own. He considers that if he spends the rest of her short life with her, it will only be a few years for him. As a vision of an older Lottie appears, the woman tells Damien she understands his thinking but wouldn't make the same choice. Damien concludes that it's too late to solve his emotional attachment by keeping his distance. The woman advises him to create happy memories with Lottie to lessen the sadness of her eventual departure. She warns that one day, Damien will regret his choice as he sits alone in his grand, empty office. Lottie pouts with her arms crossed against a background of little yellow chicks. Two maids suggest that Lottie visit the glass house to lift her spirits, and she readily agrees. Walking through the glass house, Lottie asks if her bad mood was obvious, and the maids confirm it was very clear. She touches a red rose, remembering that the glass house was a gift from her father. The maids reassure her that everyone knows her father loves her and is just very busy lately. The maids discuss how to make Lottie happier, offering to get her anything she needs from outside. One of the maids kindly offers to buy things for Lottie since it's difficult for her to go out. Lottie beams happily, saying the thought is enough, and she realizes everyone cares for her more than she knew. A voice interrupts her thoughts, announcing that she is here. Lottie turns and happily calls out to her father as the maids formally greet Damien. She tells Damien she knows where to go with him, certain his recent moodiness is the cause of his behavior. Damien responds, informing a surprised Lottie that he's brought a guest who is waiting in the drawing room. A doctor with glasses greets the princess as Damien explains he's a highly skilled physician from the imperial palace. Lottie politely greets the man, feeling a sudden wave of fear. Damien tells the doctor that Lottie wanted a checkup. The doctor asks if she feels any discomfort before beginning the examination. Lottie internally worries that if the book's events are unfolding as written, signs of her illness will soon appear. After a moment of thought, she concludes her fear was justified, thinking as expected. The doctor asks if she's healthy, promising not to lie about her condition before mentioning a weakness, causing Lottie to gulp anxiously. He diagnoses her with cold energy that affects her circulation, and Lottie fears this means she will die in 5 years. As the doctor leaves, Lottie believes that with this diagnosis, she can finally forget what the book predicted. Lottie talks with her maids, wondering aloud if her father is acting strange lately. Sitting with her maids, Lottie agrees with their assessment that her father's odd behavior must be because he's too busy. She decides that simply worrying about the situation won't solve anything. With renewed determination, Lottie realizes she has to confront the problem directly. She abruptly stands and announces she's going to see her father, surprising the maids who urge her to wait. A voice calls out Lady Lottalusha as she runs off, determined to do what she wants. Elsewhere, Damien reflects that keeping his distance didn't work. He couldn't stand not seeing her. He stands outside his empty office, questioning his own feelings. Lottie's voice surprises him from inside the room, where she sits on his throne asking if he's there. A brief, painful memory of a tearful girl with pink hair pleading flashes by. Damien walks toward his throne, where Lottie waits for him. He asks why she's here, and Lottie replies that she came because she wanted to. Lottie thinks he must be confused by her visit after avoiding her, and she directly asks if he has something to say. Damien feigns ignorance, but Lottie angrily accuses him of avoiding her. He calmly asks if that's really what she thinks. Damien turns away, stating that she wouldn't understand even if he tried to explain. Lottie's confidence wavers as she worries he might actually confirm her fears. She reaffirms her resolve, deciding she doesn't want them to be like strangers. Lottie directly confronts Damien, asking why he's avoiding her if he doesn't hate her. Damien looks down, his expression pained and conflicted. Lottie bravely declares that if he's a coward, she will be brave enough for the both of them. Damien looks at her tiredly, asking if she intends to keep pushing the issue. Staring at the closed door, Lottie calls her dad a coward, but tells him not to take too long to come back. Joshua asks Lottie if she and the Duke aren't currently speaking. Lottie explains that her dad is the one avoiding her and has been acting strangely. She brushes off Joshua's concern about a letter, saying she's more worried about her father. Joshua thinks the letter's sender must be upset. Joshua asks how long the Duke has been acting this way, and an annoyed Lottie says it's only been a few days. Their chibi forms argue. Lottie admits it has been longer, and Joshua calls them both stubborn for letting it go on for weeks. Joshua looks surprised, asking if that's what the Duke said. Lottie confirms, explaining that was his answer when she went to him for the truth. Joshua tries to reassure Lottie, reasoning that since the Duke is human, he couldn't have meant what she thinks he did. Lottie sits alone, gravely reflecting that even if she lives a long life, she'll die before her immortal father as she lacks demonic power. She wonders with dread if she is destined to make her father experience the pain of another family death. Smack. Joshua taps Lottie's forehead to get her attention, asking what she's thinking about so hard and calling her a dummy when she complains. Lottie asks Joshua if he feels the same way about loss, and he hesitates before answering. She admits that because she's still young, she hasn't had to experience anything like that yet. In the grand sitting room, Lottie decides not to worry about it, as this is the first time she's gotten so close to anyone. An unseen maid calls out to Lottie, reminding her that it's time to get ready for bed. Veronica approaches with a look of concern, asking if something has happened. Pout. Lottie turns away, her expression sullen amid a backdrop of flowers. Hug. As Veronica embraces her, Lottie finally asks why her dad has been avoiding her. Veronica asks what Damien told her, and Lottie tearfully reveals he called himself a coward. Veronica gently holds Lottie's head, comforting her as she listens. Lottie explains that her father must have been 1,000 times sadder than she was, concluding that his immense grief is why he's acting like a coward. Burying her face in Veronica's shoulder, Lottie confesses she feels selfish for worrying more about her own sadness. When Lottie asks if she's a bad person, Veronica replies that demons are much worse, as a monstrous shadow appears behind her. Lottie sweetly declares she likes Veronica, who reciprocates the sentiment, saying she wants to be a good person for Lottie. Veronica asks if Lottie is feeling better, and a smiling Lottie confirms that she is. Lottie privately thinks she'll still get angry when she sees her dad's face, then tells Veronica not to go to bed too late. Noticing a book Lottie hasn't used, Veronica offers to put it away, but Lottie quickly insists she'll use it again. Rep. Lottie curiously opens a letter that has just arrived. Done. Her eyes widen in shock as she reads. The letter is from Bihan, her dear beloved brother. In the letter, Bihan apologizes for the delay, explains he just finished exams, and promises to be home soon for vacation. Shine. Lottie beams with pure joy, excited that she will get to see Bihan again. Rise. Looking at the letter on her desk, Lottie decides that she should write back to him. She clenches her fists with a gasp, having just had a brilliant idea. Imagining an angry confrontation, Lottie decides to write a letter to her father instead to avoid losing her temper. Lottie chews on her quill, deep in thought about what to write. She sits at her desk, admitting to herself that writing her very first letter is much harder than she imagined. Scritch. Determined to do her best, Lottie finally begins to write. A new day dawns, casting bright sunlight over the grand Irodium mansion. Chirp, birds sing outside the window, where Lottie has fallen asleep at her desk over her unfinished letter. A large hand gently and lovingly strokes the sleeping Lottie's hair. Damien watches over his daughter with a solemn, conflicted expression. A smiling woman with pink hair offers a cheerful farewell, bringing the current chapter to a close.